and again, and from other people, is that this was indeed a misfired rocket that experienced a motor failure on the way to other targets. Again, I don't think this was an intentional targeting of the hospital, but the rockets were in the air. They experienced a failure. And then basically, I think if you look at how those breakups happen, either the intact warhead or debris or both fell in basically, tragically, the perfect place to cause a great amount of harm, right? They landed right in the middle of this hospital parking lot where you had a handful of internally displaced persons sleeping outside, right? You had hospital beds outside. You had over a dozen cars with tons of fuel. You had a ton of rocket fuel itself, right? And all of this, even if there was a fairly minor impact from the rocket, that huge amount of accelerant basically led to a huge fire. And you can look at the photos of the courtyard. It's super burnt up. And I think that's very clear that that's what caused the majority of the damage here. And I think even though there were definitely casualties, and it's certainly regrettable, I think the initial claims of those early numbers that the health ministry reported, that CNN reported, and others of 500 to 800, it's just clear that those casualties are not accurate. But I know, and I'm just presenting my version of what I think happened based on a preponderance of the evidence, and you can offer a different version. But I think the rocket failure is the most likely here. I don't think this was intentional. It's obviously very tragic, and I think that as I said yesterday, for a rocket to make sense, I think it needed to basically have two things going on. One, it needed to not hit an exterior part of a building, right? A concrete facade can absorb a lot of that 200-300-pound warhead. It didn't. It had a perfect direct hit, and that's the problem. Is that increases how devastating it is. And then the second part is it needed accelerant to make all of the situation much worse. And there was fuel all over the place, air tanks all over the place, and so I think that's what we're looking at here, and that's my summary of where we're at.
Saif, I know. So Saif him and his team helped us a lot with the tweet we did yesterday, explaining why it could be a JDAM by the military expert. That one took a lot of time. So first, appreciate all the help there. Saif, want to get your thoughts on what Michael said, and obviously everything we've seen on the IDF side, from the Al Jazeera video that shows a misfired rocket, but at the same time shows. Actually, just before we go to you, Saif, Tal, I was asking you earlier. Remember that Al Jazeera video that went viral, and it shows the rocket misfiring, but also shows some sort of flare on the left corner. What were your thoughts on that particular video, that live stream?
Yeah, so that was also very strange. Also, the way, something that was really particularly strange in that video was how the rocket just seems to keep going for a second. The rockets that are produced by Hamas, the PIG, and other militant groups in Gaza, they don't have guidance systems. They're fired in a general direction, and when that fuel reserve is gone, that's it. But we do see Al Jazeera take a video of a missile or rocket that keeps going up. And then there's some type of explosion, and less than 5 seconds later, there's the explosion on the hospital. And talking to a friend of mine who's much better qualified with ballistic analysis, he said it was very strange that only 5 seconds later, there's an explosion, like, in terms of the time. But we would actually have to do the math behind, could something at that height, and if we kind of like roughly estimate the size and weight of this missile or rocket, we could maybe try to determine how long it would take for it to fall at that rate. I'm not sure about that small dot that you're talking about. I didn't really give much concern to it, but I think it's more just a product of the actual explosion that we saw in the sky in that video.
I appreciate that. I want to go to Saif on this one. There's a lot of hands up, so I want to just I want to balance it out with the different takes, if that's okay, guys. I want to go to Saif. Saif, you've heard what Tal said. I mean, Tal's been pretty comprehensive with his analysis and tried to be as objective as possible. He's leaning on a misfired rocket by the looks of it, but obviously there's more evidence coming out, and he's going to look at that video from Syrian, for example. Tell us more about where you stand. Tell us about the analysis you guys did yesterday, that tweet that we did that went viral, and what you've seen today as well. And by the way, guys, so Saif is not the expert. He was just, him and his team were helping write it as we spoke to the expert. But go ahead, Saif.
Yes. All right, thank you, Mario. So I'm a huge proponent of facts. Okay, so we just have to look at the what we know so far. So I'm seeing a lot of people bring up the flares specifically, right? So let's figure out what the flares are. So in the conversation yesterday with the explosives expert, he said that a lot of the missiles that are high technology, they actually use submunition. If you guys are unfamiliar with what submunition is, submunition is basically when you have a very high capacity missile or a very high tech missile. They use something called explosive bolts to split the munition. And basically, what submunition is, it means that there's one missile, but at the end or at a specific trajectory, depending on how it's programmed, it basically it splits into two missiles, splits into multiple, depending on what that specific missile is. So if we're talking about the flares and I guess we're putting that on a misfire and a defective missile, then sure, I guess. But if we really look at the facts and what technology is capable of, we understand very well that missiles are very capable of putting out submunition, in which submunition, once it gets close to its target, it actually uses the explosive bolts, in which the explosive bolts put out. And if you go look at previous video evidence of similar things, these explosive bolts set out those similar looking flares that we saw in the video, right? So that's number one. So when it comes down to, oh, so it was two blasts. Yeah, okay, well, that explains that, because when you have submunition, it splits into two rockets. You have one rocket, splits into two, multiple blasts or two blasts, whatever it may be. And then let's move on. Let's move on to the evidence of the crater. So a lot of people are saying that there really isn't a crater, et cetera, et cetera. Again, if we're talking about high tech missiles, again, I've heard the argument that it could be the better three, et cetera, right? So one thing that everybody should know is that the Better Three, Hamas actually takes a lot of pride in saying that the Better Three is actually it's capable of exploding 20 meters above ground, and that's something that they take very high pride in. And the Better Three is I guess, the highest probability from that side where it could have been that type of rocket, right? So when we really look at the facts, guys, the facts are there's very minimal things that we know for an absolute. Okay, so one thing that the BBC does say in their report about this is that they say another part of the missing evidence, and that's based on a different expert's claim, is that another important part of the missing evidence is missile fragments. Projectiles are often identifiable by the wreckage of their shell, and they can be used to determine the projectile's origin. Excuse me. But the IDF, after that, they're claiming that the absence of a large crater basically completely takes them out of the equation in a sense, correct? So when it comes down to the actual facts of the matter, and if I'm actually, let me go back a little bit. So let's talk about the post. The post in of itself, I saw that it was very controversially received. So let me make something clear. The post was made in a complete unbiased manner, and the person who gave us the actual opinion is he's pro-Israel. Actually, he's an ex-Marine Corps veteran, and his entire we worked on this for 5 hours alongside him, and the thing that we actually got out of it was that he confirmed, based off of the evidence that was there yesterday, that this was an airdropped bomb slash missile, and that the propulsion slash I guess that's what he called it. A lot of people are assuming, oh, there was an failed interception. Okay, that was debunked, because that obviously then it wouldn't have had the capacity to get to that high velocity for it to fall in 6 seconds. And even if it did, then even if it was technologically capable of doing so, there's very limited militaries and missiles in the world that are capable of doing something like this. And the missile is clearly went supersonic when it comes down to the video evidence that we've seen. So really, we don't know actually that in that video specifically, that whatever it was, like whatever the actual light in the sky, et cetera, because it was claimed to be during the missile barrage
So
from Hamas, et
yeah,
cetera.
so
I'd like
yeah,
to.
so just to yeah,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of points made, and Tao, If you can ask Craig and Nog, I see your hand up. It's okay. I'll go to you in a bit. Tal, I would love to get your thoughts. I know there's a lot of points made, but if you could break down the points that Saif made and give us your thoughts on them, just kind of see that counter argument and what your response would be.
Yeah, of course. So it's important to know that I don't have a background in ballistics, so my take on this is purely based on imagery that I've seen, nothing of an expert background. There was a crater at the site of the attack. It was quite small. The only thing that's significant in the crater is the fact that there is like shrapnel marks on the side of it, but of course this is still inconclusive. It could also be artillery that did that, based on from what I've understood. There is one important point that I want to make here, and I think that this is something that we're going to keep falling into unless we do a proper analysis. Is one thing that you talked about that you analyzed was the video of the impact going at supersonic. That video is not confirmed. There's no actual OSINT, as far as I'm aware, there's no confirmation that that video is showcasing that strike. And this is the same thing regarding the video currently being shown by Syria, which I'm currently looking through and trying to find.
Well, then we can say that none of the videos are confirmed, right?
No,
we can say that
yes,
for any video,
there are.
right?
Al Jazeera.
Okay, let's not interrupt. Let's not interrupt. Then I'd like to make a point. Go ahead.
So, for example, right now with Syria Girl, I'm currently looking through photos of different hospitals in Gaza, trying to find out which one this is. The one, for example,
it's from today.
Noga, please, Ega.
Okay, it doesn't confirm anything for me. It's also about exactly determining where this took place. But after interrupting, something important to realize is also like when the IDF was posting that here's a conversation between the militants, this is proof, and then people were saying, but why would they lie? And then we're going, as in, first we need to confirm that these things are true. The reason I don't ever look at anything the IDF has to publish is simply because I can't confirm whether or not those conversations are real or not. And so there's no reason for me to look at them in my analysis. And so when we're talking about these different videos, first we need to confirm them. One of the only videos that we know 100% is confirmed is the one from Al Jazeera, due to the fact that when they zoom in, we were able to, different experts in open source intelligence were able to actually pinpoint exactly where the explosion hit. And due to very, very visible solar panels in that video by Al Jazeera, we were able to pinpoint that that was the explosion from the hospital. But the other videos are still being looked into. And again, this isn't, as Mario has said and others have said, this isn't about going one way or the other. I have no problem discussing or putting a big marker on the end of my analysis that it was the IDF that either did it deliberately or by mistake, or that it was Hamas or PAG. I really, when it comes to the analysis point, it does not matter to me what the conclusion is. It matters how we get to that conclusion.
I appreciate it, Zev.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Zev, go ahead. And what we'll do,
I'll
go ahead, Zev. And what we're going to do afterwards, guys, is start looking into the other developments that are happening. It's two other major developments. One is the threat of HEZBOLLAH. And just now, as you were speaking, by the way, Tal, there was just an announcement. The Israeli Broadcasting Corporation, according to the commander of the Home Front, the goal of the military operation is for there to be no military or political rule by Hamas. This came out. Also, there's one of the IDF Home Front Command has announced that they have now established a plan to evacuate all towns and cities in northern Israel that are within 5 kilometers from the border with Lebanon. Initially, the plan was 2 kilometers. So that's these are the two things. Zev, how significant is it that it's 5 kilometers now instead of 2?
I don't think it's that significant. Okay. I would like to say something, and I'm going to try to be very objective. So, how do I put this? I'm just trying to control myself. So I understand, I'm not accusing or harping on anyone in here. It's the fog of war, a lot of disinformation coming out, and no one in this space was on the ground near the hospital, okay? That being said, everyone, including the previous speakers on all sides, are extrapolating and, drawing their conclusions from videos, and I agree, an investigation needs to be done. That being said, so the Department of Defense in the United States is lying, right? All the colonels on all the networks, even the networks that hate Israel, they're all lying, right? They're all just putting out propaganda. That's number one. Number two is, it's just funny, right? People would quicker blame and come up with conspiracies of the state of Israel and take the word of Hamas, because we know how truthful Hamas is, right? So from where I sit, I'm not demanding an apology from anyone. I'm not demanding a concession from anyone. That being said, I will take the words from Anthony Blinken, from the Department of Defense, from the national security experts, from all the generals on every single network, including Air Force colonels, generals Wesley Clark, Cedric Layton, James Spider Marks, who have all said, from what they've reviewed, and these people have 30 to 40 years experience in the military. This was from an Islamic, I shouldn't say that, it was from either Hamas or Jihad, it was fired from within the Gaza Strip. Now, I will concede one, their audio recording, that didn't move me whatsoever, right? Because it's just an audio recording. But that being said, when you see the fact that, the hospital, from what I can see, and I could be wrong, it seems to be intact. It doesn't seem to be that it was actually destroyed, right? There's pictures from inside the hospital, which are time-stamped, of the chapel, and the stained glass windows were destroyed. Okay. So I just, I understand, I'm trying to be very calm here, Mario. I understand that it's a difficult scenario for all people. However, all these people who are offering their opinions based on this video and that, I don't think they have any right really hypothesizing or come to any, real conclusion. I'll just finish with this, right? So, but the people who do know are the national security experts in the Biden administration, right? So they have come out and said, and I would call it in no uncertain terms, this is not Israel, right? So I will take their
Biden said it
word.
was 40 beheaded babies. I don't think we can take
Yeah,
Biden's
so
word.
please don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you. Thank you. So at the end of the day, this is not just Biden, right? This is Anthony Blinken. This is his Department of Defense, the national security experts, all the generals on the network. Not one of them has said, and even on some of the networks that are very, very anti-Israel, they're all saying the same thing, right? So this appears not to be Israel. And the final thing I would add is I understand that people's emotions are on high, but that being said, I was perfectly willing as an objective person yesterday to say that, listen, I'm absolutely open to the possibility that this was an Israeli action. So I do think that some people who are still stuck in their narratives should at least have the courtesy to say, I am open to the possibility that this was Hamas or this was Jihad, right? No one in this room is an actual munitions expert with 30, that I know of, right? With 30 to 40 years experience, but the people who are have opined, and they've been relatively clear in what they've said. I didn't hear anything from any of, even the New York Times. Yesterday, their front page was this: Israel bombs hospital, kills 500 people. Now, what does it say? Palestinian, rocket misguides kills people, right? So I think we just have to be very careful. Mario, I'm sorry that I hogged up so much time. I'm trying to be objective, but I think that some people need to be a little bit more objective in their reasoning and not just lock themselves into a narrative. Don't go go look at an entity or a state and try to find the crime. Look at the crime and try to find the culprit.
So Ben, just a quick, without everything we know now, just looking at it yesterday, you've got Gaza getting bombed by Israel. You've got Israel's made warnings. And by the way, I'm literally 50-50 now. So yesterday I was leaning more on this being, I'll probably say I'm still 55 to 60%. This is an Israeli missile, but I still haven't looked at.
Are you serious?
Everything I'm.
What?
Yeah, based on, because.
Hold on. Just everyone else, please. I have to have this little back and forth with Mario. So, Mario, I love you and I respect you. That being said, I'd like to know what you're basing your conclusions on, right? Like, I think you can agree that I'm a pretty objective person. So, in order for your narrative to be correct, that this is even potentially in the realm of Israel, you'd have to be saying that the entirety of the U.S. administration is lying, right? That the British are lying, the French are lying,
The French,
everyone's lying, the Germans are lying.
Did the French say it was a Palestinian rocket?
Yeah, they said, yeah, I can pull up the tweet somewhere. They said it is looking more like it is from an Islamic Jihad or Hamas rocket.
Okay, so if we're starting to see, so the last I know, remember, I woke up only a couple of hours ago. So from what I know, the information that I have, and I haven't looked into everything, so I haven't looked into Tal's thread either. So I'm leaning more and more towards the middle. So yesterday I was like maybe 70% it was an Israeli missile. Now it's gone down to what, 55, 60%. If you send me like now France, because yesterday when I went to bed, France was not blaming anyone. The EU was not blaming anyone.
Correct.
The Netherlands, Spain, the United Nations said they need their own investigation. Britain, Japan.
I guess the difference is, right, the sun is rosy.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Getting it. Probably I'll have a kind of final answer today as the day goes. But let's look at it.
Yeah. One more thing, Mario. I mean, the hospital is still standing.
Yeah, I understand. Guys. All right, yeah, in a sec. I think Ben, I know you've tried to be objective, but let me give my.
I'm trying.
I know. But look, let me give you a counter argument, not on where we are today, but on yesterday. So you've got Gaza getting bombed by Israel, obviously. Israel has threatened hospitals before. You got the director came out and said, hey, the video obviously showed the hospital getting completely destroyed. It was pretty atrocious. The death toll came out. And obviously, you know, the death toll was like all over the place. 500 and 800 and 1,000 within less than an hour. It kept
Yeah,
changing.
it was all made up.
Yeah, whoever spoke, if it was you, Noga, I asked just to not to interrupt. I think I was pretty clear on it. So going back to the point, if you look at the facts, what we knew yesterday, Ben, it's very fair to come to not a conclusion, but to make assumptions that was an Israeli missile. I think it was very fair. Obviously, coming to a final conclusion is not fair, is not right. But you know, this is
Correct.
from what we knew yesterday, and I think even you were a lot more in the middle than you are now. Now,
No, what I said was this. No. Please, if you're going to quote me or attribute something to me, I want to be quoted accurately. What I said was this. I am absolutely open to the notion that there is a possibility that this was an accident on the part of Israel. Now, what I heard from a lot of people on the other side was not the same. You know, no one reciprocated that. It was, oh, Israel did this, Israel did this. So all I'm saying is this. I understand everyone's point of view. I do.
do you want me to respond? Because you've made a lot of good points. I'm saying yesterday. All I said yesterday, you were more in the middle. Is that true or not?
Yesterday, I was the same as I am today. I'm objective. However, if you can look at this as like a criminal case, right? The preponderance of evidence seems to be weighing towards that this was not the state of Israel.
So yesterday you were more in the middle than you are now, because now you've seen more evidence and you're more towards that this is an Islamic Jihad rocket, correct?
Well, for me, I'm convinced.
Yeah,
I'm convinced.
So my statement is fair. Yesterday you were more in the middle, now you're convinced. So my statement was accurate.
I wouldn't say I was in the middle. I was center right.
More in the middle. That's what I said, to be exact.
Correct.
Okay, so my statement is accurate.
I can live with that. Okay. You're making me smoke, Mario, but go ahead.
So my statement is accurate. And this is fair, because what we knew yesterday, it seemed very likely, based on the information we had. Now, the narrative coming from the other side was a bit all over the place, and that's normal. Like the information just came out. Now what we're seeing is we've still got some countries condemning Israel, other countries condemning the Islamic Jihad. I do want to point out the other side, and the only reason I'm doing that is because you pointed that side, Ben, and I wasn't planning to point the other side. But there is.
Mario, if I could just speak on the point of just from the perspective of being objective, really quickly, just
very briefly, please, very briefly, Saif. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So, what are the new facts that we did see today? We saw the crater, and what did we see? We saw that the U.S. came out and said that it's basically not Israel, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Objectively,
and more than really that, just say we're back and forth. Or we see the hospital. The hospital has not been blown up or exploded.
Yes, of course. That takes out the possibility of it being a 1,000-pound bomb. I'm right there with you, and that's why in the analysis that we narrowed it down to a 300 to 700-pound bomb. That takes out the possibility of it being a 1,000-pound bomb. We're being completely objective right now. So let's be real. Right now, in the politics scene across the world, we are all familiar with what's going on here in the U.S., elections-wise, et cetera, et cetera. Biden administration cannot afford a hit like this at the specific point. And the clearest evidence of that this is basically very preliminary is as simple as they didn't put out evidence. It's hearsay. No, we don't believe it's Israel. Every single person who's came out and said anything, it's all hearsay. So when it comes out to the evidence that we've been presented so far, what we are able to conclude is basically look at the video, look at the audio, and look at the aftermath. If we look at the aftermath, it's basically, it doesn't show anything. And I'm being objective right now completely. This doesn't show conclusively that if it was a Israeli airstrike or if it was a different type of airstrike. But what does show conclusively throughout this entire situation is that it is more likely to be, and let me finish. So when it comes down to why it is more likely to be an Israeli airstrike, it's because number one, it's okay, let me put it this way, guys. I'm going to reference yesterday's expert's opinion again, because at the end of the day, we don't know the absolute fact,
please,
and that's why we talk.
What's the expert opinion?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, that's why we talk to experts, and the expert basically said that.
But who's the expert?
No, so I can tell you. I'm not allowed to share, Ben, but I've verified the call and I've verified the person as well. So can you just tell us vaguely, without mentioning the name, Saif, who the expert is? But this is, but no, Saif, but just quickly, Ben, before you continue, Saif, I've had, before we get into the details, I've had people, I've spoken to so many, and I've had people make both arguments. That's why, and I cannot come to a conclusion myself, unless, and even the expert said, we need a forensic investigation. We cannot know for sure. The person that Saif is mentioning is a pro-Israeli expert, and you know, he went into significant detail. That was yesterday, and he sticks by his same conclusion today. But maybe not as, he's not as convinced as he was yesterday. Now the argument, so because when you look at it, when you look at all the evidence we have right now, excluding the recording, which Ed will exclude, we look at the damage, etc. You could make an argument for both, for each thesis. It could be a JPAM missile with an air, what do you call it? An air blast. That would make sense. Air burst, sorry. So that's for that one. The audio recording, obviously, we won't talk about. The geolocation, even the video that we have, and me and Tal, and I'm probably going to go to Tal afterwards, me and Tal were going back and forth. Even the video that shows a misfired rocket also shows a flare in the top left corner that some people are seeing as a jet. I can't know if it's a jet, but I'm saying there's like an argument to be made for both sides. Now, when you go to the U.S. intelligence, when you go to the U.S. intelligence, yes, generally when the U.S. intelligence conclusively and Biden visits Israel, it kind of gives some credence to the argument that it could be an Islamic Jihad missile rocket. But at the same time, you know, there's a history of lies from the administration. Maybe not to that extent, and I haven't looked into it, but from the use of torture, and you know, Pentagon's denied that they've used torture. Obviously, Iraq War, Gulf War, everyone uses that example. The Pentagon Papers is a list of lies. So if it's strategic. If this is a U.S.-made missile, for example, it might make sense for U.S. intelligence to not say the truth. I generally, but you know me, Ben, I generally don't opt for conspiracy theories, even though they end up a lot of times, they end up being true many times. I still prefer to avoid them, but I'm extremely split right now. And I think it doesn't mean much because of one reason. It doesn't mean much because I think, in my personal opinion, either side would have done it by accident. I think everyone's saying the Islamic Jihad would have done it by accident, or most people are saying that. And some people are saying Israel did it intentionally. I think it would have been in accident. It doesn't make sense to be intentional. But so this is where I stand on this.
Yeah, no, and that's, I'll be very, very brief. And that's a fair statement, Mario. And I'm not attacking you specifically. You've actually been relatively objective. I get it. Tense situation. That being said, so I understand that you have a person or a few people that help comprise, you know, that threatened, that, you know, allowed you to come to that opinion, and that's fine, right? What I am saying, I'm not an expert on munitions. I'm an expert on federal law, you know, but my expertise is not the final word, right? So if I don't know something with absolute certainty, I will defer to somebody who does, and I wouldn't just use one source, right? So what I'm saying is this: yes, there are conflicting reports. I get that. That being said, the people in my mind, and it's just my own opinion, who have the most weight, or these are people who have been 30, 40 years commanding the Army, commanding the Air Force, commanding special operations, right? Not one of them, and some of these are not pro-Israel, you cannot deny that. Not one of them has said this appears to be Israel. The only people who I hear saying this appears to be Israel are people who, and I understand for privacy reasons you can't disclose them, right, are people who remain in the shadows. That being said, there are 20, 30,000 people listening. So I think for the sake of objectivity, you've taken the right stance. You don't know. I agree with that. I accept it, and I respect you.
But my stance was the same yesterday as well. It was obviously leaning more on the Israel and Israel being behind it, but I said multiple times, I don't know, and I still don't know, and I think we'll never know for sure.
Yeah. Hey Mario, I have a question. Is Biden talking right now?
Yeah, please. Yeah, in a sec.
Is Biden?
Yeah, go ahead, Hadi.
Yeah, is Biden talking right now? Because I've seen some of his quotes on some Lebanese news. He's saying a lot of important things. One thing he said that he did not say that Hamas is responsible for bombing the hospital intentionally. And another thing he said that we did not inform Israel that we will participate in the war in case HEZBOLLAH.
Yeah, so I'm just looking. Yeah, Biden just came in. That was 12:51, so 5 minutes ago. He said, on the bombing of the hospital, he said the Pentagon says it is unlikely that Israel was behind the attack on the hospital. So even on the from the Pentagon, unlikely does not seem too conclusive. What do you think, Ben? And then I want to go to the panel afterwards.
I completely disagree with you. I think that no. I think for me, and that's just my own opinion, it is very conclusive. And the fact that what he said earlier, he goes, and from what I've seen, and he's not relying on the Israeli intelligence, it was the other side, the other team. I don't think he's specifically calling out
There's
Hamas.
there's another on the Hamas on the point of Hamas, by the way, Hadi. What he says is he doesn't think it's. I'm not saying that Hamas was the one that bombed. He said, I'm not saying, and by the way, someone unmuted. All right, he's saying I'm not saying that Hamas was the one that deliberately bombed the hospital. So I'm not sure if he's on this comment.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking,
Yeah.
because the transition from Arabic to English is weird. So I'm just.
Yeah, he says, I'm not saying that Hamas was the one that deliberately bombed the hospital. So it's a bit different that bombed the hospital.
So I've spoken enough.
I'll go. Yeah, I'll do it.
But I'll finish with this.
Quickly, would you go to panel, please?
Yeah, very quickly. So what I'm saying from where I sit, right, I will take the words of the military and the U.S. military echelon and so forth before I trust the words of
Yeah,
Hamas.
I think, but I think no one mentioning the counter argument is mentioning because Hamas said so. I never even cared about what Hamas said, and like the death toll, for example, I kind of dismiss it.
I had to make that point, and you know what? I had to make that point, you know what?
I understood. So Tal, I'd love to get your thoughts on the back and forth we've had. Then I'll go to Craig, Michael, Noga, and Saif. Go ahead, Tal.
So I think I agree with the notion that at the end of the day, all of us are not on the ground. None of us have the ability to actually know what occurred. But I think that as observers, people who are affected by this, either personally or through friends and family, it is important for us as the viewers to try to figure out what happened. And at the end of the day, we don't always trust our government leaders. We don't always trust activists. We don't always trust politicians on what they're going to say. And so this type of analysis is important as long as we try to keep it as objective as possible. I've been looking at the video posted by Syria Girl for a while now. There's two very distinct things in the video that might be able to help us figure out where it was located. One is these distinct, very big pillars with brown bottoms and what appears to be a fire station across the road. Looking at the images of the hospital that was attacked, there's nothing, none of the pillars match in terms of the size of the pillars showcased in the video. I also looked at Shifa Hospital. While we do see pillars that are of the similar size, we do not see this brown underside that we see in the video. So still inconclusive. But the point is, we need to be careful about the videos that we get posted. Something that's very important to realize, and this regards every single side of the conflict. This regards Israeli posts. This is why, for example, while there was imagery, confirmed imagery from, let's just say Al Jazeera that showcased something that looked like a misfire, we saw a lot of Israeli posting videos of misfires from Gaza from years ago. And a lot of the reasons that people do this is because they hear about something that happened. They intrinsically believe it because why would my side lie about this? And then they simply search in misfire Hamas and they choose the first video they see and they share it. And then this misinformation starts a snowball effect and then it goes everywhere. I always try to make sure not to input a malicious intent. I don't think that people share these videos to be malicious. Maybe there are, but until proven otherwise, I always assume that people do it simply because they want to try to find the truth or they truly believe that this is real. But we need to be careful about the videos that are uploaded. And regarding trusting the State Department, again, people who, especially Palestinians who do not have a lot of trust in the United States, which is very understandable considering the positions that they've taken for many, many years. There's no reason that they should take the word of an intelligence report by any United States official or the Israeli officials. It makes sense that they would trust Hamas or the PIG or other Palestinian sources first. But again, and then you would hear the exact same thing coming from Israeli sources. There's no reason that any of the Israeli sources would ever trust what Hamas or the PIG or Palestinian sources had to say. And so I think that people who are currently in this live who are trying to really get the facts and the information on the ground have to try to look at this from every single perspective and find the information that's relevant and fact check its dates, times, and geolocation.
Understood.
Why is it that Tal is the only person that's bringing up this point? There isn't a single photograph that has been released by either side showing the hospital. All we see is a pothole in the parking lot.
May I please speak?
In a bit, Craig. I see your hand up.
Yeah.
Can we guys stick to hands? Like we've been
I will. I am.
Minutes.
Guys. Can
Ariel,
everyone?
can
Yeah.
you please
I'll
show a
decide.
photograph? One photograph or video of the hospital that's been bombed. Not a single photograph exists showing the hospital
Patrick,
that's been bombed. Not one.
As far as I know, so Tal, that point that Patrick made regarding photos and videos of the hospital, as far as I know, there are some released, and it doesn't. Someone said it doesn't show that much damage. Tal, have you seen any footage or photos of the hospital itself?
There is one very gruesome video from the hospital where we see a lot of people that were mutilated by the explosion in the courtyard, which I geolocated in my analysis. There's another video from the daytime where they're looking around from the courtyard, and a third video from within. It looks like a church, showcasing some of the damage to the windows. But from the 3 videos that we have and the imagery of the actual location, it's what has already been showcased by Mario in terms of the damage. But these photos weren't released by official sources only until later on. But they have
photos, etc. Has there been such a release? Photos, etc. Has there been such a release from Hamas? And Craig and Michael, I'll go to you next. Tal, has there been anything? Has Hamas released
intelligence related to the attack on the Al Ahliya hospital in Gaza as a result of a failed rocket launched by militant terrorists and not the result of an Israeli
Who's that from?
Senator Mark Warner,
Yeah,
Warner from the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Yeah, but I think they'd get their intelligence from the Pentagon, no?
I have a question to ask. Mario.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Craig and Syrian Girl after just a sec. But Zev, just quickly, don't they get their information from the Pentagon, what we already read?
So, absolutely. But I noticed that you wanted, statements from politicians. And again, I think that you would concede that the U.S. intelligence, whether people like it or not, is probably the best in the world. So
it is the best. Yeah, it is the best. I don't know I know they've lied before, but then it's easy to say because I don't know if you look at I'd love to see a study on how many times they lied versus given things that turned out to be true. Some independent studies of that, because obviously you can always point out to one lie, and everyone likes to use the Iraq nuclear weapons lie. All right, that's one lie. It could be a lie. I've never looked into it. But doesn't mean every single thing they say is a lie. But in the counter argument, they've got a lot of incentive to lie. So it's just tough. I don't know. And maybe Michael, I'd ask you after Steering Girl. The question I'd have for you is how likely, from the wording, the way they've worded it, it seems unlikely it was Israel, for example. Is that how they'd word it if they're confident with their analysis, or the wording seems like they're not even confident? So maybe Michael.
And in most European countries, including in Israel, usually there is this scale, right, on probability. Likely, unlikely, almost certainly, almost not certainly, that kind of thing. So to use likely, you're almost always very confident in that assessment. And I think it trips up people that aren't familiar with that because they hear likely and they think, oh, well, that maybe they're not so sure. But no, if you understand DOD, if you understand the IC, for them to come out and say that a day later and to use, that kind of language, that kind of probabilistic language on likely is very firm to me. And I already kind of gave my thoughts on this at the top that I feel like as of the new evidence we've seen today, I feel very strong. I feel very confident that we've seen a misfired rocket. And that goes to President Biden's recent remarks too, where he said that he doesn't, I think he said, we quoted it, he didn't think it was a deliberate action. That would also jive with that analysis.
So unlikely that Israel was behind the attack. Unlikely is a strong word, or it shows.
I would say it's a strong word.
Okay.
I would say that they
what would be a weak word if they're not sure? If they think it's not, most likely not, but they're not sure.
So I think with how high stakes this is, I don't think they would have offered. I don't think they would have offered an assessment this early if they felt the need to kick the can down the road. They could have tried to delay that. The Pentagon or the IC. But the fact they came out very quickly with unlikely that Israel is involved, I think they have pretty clear evidence to use that.
Makes sense. Syrian Girl, I want to go to you just for balance, and then I know, Saif, you've got a question for Tal, and then we'll go to Craig. Syrian Girl, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, when it comes to American sources, you have to consider the source, okay? They have their biases. Right now, American embassies are being attacked around the world. Obviously, they have incentive to lie, and obviously they have a history of lying. It goes far beyond WMDs in Iraq. Their lies have been historical. They lied about Syria about 1,000 times, probably. I haven't counted them, but if I had the amount of dollars they lied in Syria, I'd be a rich woman. So the point is here that we cannot take anything that they say in any sort of credibility. Biden said that he saw videos of 40 beheaded babies and then he took it back. Now, why are we not discussing what the rest of the world is saying? You know, every now and then we might get another pro-Israel government opining here, but the majority of the world is squarely putting this on Israel. Now, I want to bring up Occam's razor. The simplest answer is usually the correct one. And simply put, the Israelis were bombing everywhere, and they had threatened the hospital previously for days, saying that they would bomb. Now, the bomb that fell onto the hospital is still too much damage to be an errant rocket that wouldn't have had the acceleratory force that we heard make. An errant rocket that's kind of been thrown out of the direction wouldn't do that. The videos that we see are all support the idea that there was a jet in the plane, a jet in the sky flaring before it bombed. Every ounce of evidence out there, there's not one shred of evidence that says that it was an errant missile. It's all conjecture. It's all just people opining their opinions. There is every evidence pointing to it being an Israeli bomb. Now, here's my analysis. I believe that the Israelis wanted to intimidate their objective, their stated objective is to get all 4 hospitals to evacuate. They've been saying that for years. So for days. For 2 days prior, they actually bombed the roof of that hospital. I think that they threw the bomb onto the parking lot to try to intimidate them in order to make them evacuate, but they didn't realize it would cause that much damage. And as a result, the backlash was so strong that they tried to roll it back. You know, initially, the spokesman for the Israelis, Naftali, who Netanyahu placed in that position, said it was an Israeli bomb and said it was because the Hamas militants had a military base in there. The amount of narratives that we've heard, like last time on the space, they said it was maybe a car bomb or an IED. Like the amount of or secondary explosion, blah blah blah. There is not one shred of evidence that they have produced for their claims. Occam's razor tells us Israel did it, and why they did it is because they want to clear Gaza out, right? So I'm tired of this conversation, honestly, because we never had such conversation about the fact that most of the people killed at the raid were killed in the crossfire.
Thank you, Siringo. I remember you sound now like Nogo, and Nogo was really upset about talking about. I'm going to go to Craig. Craig, I appreciate you waiting. And I know, if you've got a question for Tal, or right after Craig, and Noga, I know you're waiting patiently. I will go to you and Piotr and Ver. Craig, go ahead.
I will try to be brief.
Thanks, Craig.
Let's assume for a moment that this was IDF ordnance. Okay, let's start with the premise that this was an IDF piece of ordnance submunition. Number one, when you have a submunition, you generally have what's called a parent munition, which means what it was launched from or what it was deployed from. There is no evidence that there is a parent munition that this submunition was released from. So that submunition argument is out, because wherever it lets go of the ordnance, so as it opens, right, and it deploys its submunition, as the submunition comes down, right, you have that impact. But then outside of that, you still have the parent munition that it was launched from. That parent munition is going to be anywhere, depending on the height with which it is released. It is going to be within 1 to maybe 200 yards, because you want to be specific about these type of strikes. So that parent munition does not exist. Does not exist. Okay? It simply doesn't. If it was going to be found, it would have been found already. Number two, if again we start with the premise that this was an Israeli piece of ordnance, number one, there is no such thing as an airburst JDAM. They do not exist. They do not exist. Okay, JDAMs. No, stop. I know this ordnance. I know what's going on. I've trained with naval pilots who have dropped this ordnance. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, I've been there in the military operating areas when I see this stuff get released. I know what I'm talking about. Okay, what ends up happening is that a JDAM is not an airburst munition. A JDAM is a kinetic munition, which means it has to make contact with the target, whether that be a building, whether that be a car, what have you. And then the munition, the ordnance then explodes. When it explodes, a JDAM is a very focused explosion. It is very focused, which means the crater will be much wider. So given the only crater that we see, the only crater that has been displayed, and if there were other craters, trust me, they would have been shown, that crater was done with a munition that does not have a focused point, which means that when a munition is dropped by Western standards, the munition comes down at a 5-10 degree angle, what have you. And as it makes that contact, it is meant to explode at the kinetic point, which means that the crater will then be correspondingly bigger to the munition, right? So I'm just talking about physics. The focused power of the ordnance is directed down and out. That produces a concussive shock wave, not a fireball. It does not make a fireball. And what it makes is it makes an explosion at the kinetic point, and then the concussion goes outwards to spread the damage out in a focused way. That is the physics of how Western ordnance works. And what we saw in the videos that people keep on repeating over and over and over again, that this shows that this is a munition dropped from an aircraft. That is simply not physics, because I have seen these bombs explode. They do not produce.
Craig, just on that point. So, Saif, I want you to ask Craig a point. I know you have a question for Tal. If you can ask your first question on Craig and respond to the points he's made.
I just got to respond really quickly, because that's not true. Absolutely not. There's actually the Blue 109. It's a hardened penetrator bomb. It can be equipped with the JDAM guidance kits, and the Blue 111. So yes, absolutely, JDAMs have the capability of exploding above ground.
Okay, so then that's fair. So then that's fair. Let's go to the. So then that's fair. So then let's go.
No. You literally just said that there are no JDAMs that have the capability of exploding above ground, and I just referenced you two. And
okay, first of all, that's not a JDAM. Okay, that's a JDAM kit. And the problem that you're making. Hold on, wait, sir. I know.
So answer my question.
Of the way these things explode.
Can missiles be equipped with JDAM kits or not?
Sir, with all due respect, that is a false premise. Because here's how it works, sir.
I'm asking you a very simple question with a reference of
I am answering it.
Can you let him answer, please? Go ahead, Craig.
The way that these work is that as it comes down, as the ordnance is dropped, number one, there is no propellant in these. Zero propellant. These are air-dropped guided munitions using the JDAM. Therefore, they do not carry propellant or rocket fuel. If this was a munition that was dropped from an Israeli aircraft, then what would have happened is, and this is physics, this is just physics, as it comes down, it creates an explosion, which then produces a concussive wave to destroy, and it is focused. If that is the case, sir, then if it is an airburst, there should be no crater. There should be nothing. And the only thing that makes up that crater is the actual remnants of the ordnance that was deployed, sir. If it is airburst, there should be no crater. That is the end of the story. Because if it is a kinetic strike, the ordnance that Israel uses, that's how it works.
You've answered well, Craig. Safe?
Alrighty. So absolutely. So when it comes down to the JDAM in of itself, you mentioned that there are no JDAMs that could be equipped. So how do we know that there can't be like, for example, on a specific missile, et cetera, given the actual advancement of the technology, that they can't equip a JDAM to a specific bomb, et cetera, et cetera. But besides that, I'll leave that to the expert, because I'm not going to go into this, because I'm not in this specifically. But just responding to your point, you said that there are no missiles or bombs that can be detonated above ground, and I just referenced two of them. But moving forward,
false premise, because if it was an airburst, there wouldn't be a crater, sir. If there was an airburst, there wouldn't be a crater, sir.
But if there was submunition involved, then absolutely it could have, because
then where is the parent? Where is the parent of the ordnance? I've seen these things. I know what they work. I know how they work. So where's the parent munition? If it was a submunition of an air deployed vehicle, the parent munition will be within 1 to 200 yards, depending on the release point. If there's not a parent munition, there is no submunition.
And then, so what you just on that point. So Craig, what you'd be looking for to say this could be a JDAM is a parent. So we know that their airburst is possible, but there must be a parent munition. A subcrater, and then the subcrater, can that be caused by the parent munition, or it cannot be caused?
Yes.
Okay.
So so the TikTok of the way this works is, as the ordnance is dropped, let's say it's a submunition. As the ordnance is dropped, the parent munition drops, and depending on whatever fuse you have it with, right? As the parent munition comes down, it then releases the submunition. As that submunition comes down, it makes a kinetic or airburst. If it was an airburst, there would not be a crater. If it was a kinetic strike, then the focus of the ordnance is meant to go down and then out, and it produces enormous craters. It doesn't produce a 30 centimeter or 24 centimeter ditch. It does. I've seen the way these things work. It is not physically possible what you're describing, sir. If it was a submunition, then it would have created a much larger crater.
So do we have? So is there any Tal? Let me go to Tal. Saif, I'll go to you because I like that back and forth.
I just have a question for
Tal.
Tal.
Go ahead.
Well.
So Tal, let me ask him first a question about the parent.
So guys, I've had my hand raised for about 45 minutes.
So has
and I'd like to speak because I've.
Yeah, so has Veer. You can wait. There's 400 people waiting that haven't spoken at all. So for you to just yell and say I haven't spoken, it's not really appreciated when we bring you up on stage every single time as a form of respect and appreciation. Let me go to Tao.
So Mario, can I please?
Yeah, go ask your question. Go ahead, Saif, and then you can ask your question to Tal as well. Saif, I think you dropped out.
So just.
Oh, you're back.
No, I'm right here.
Go ahead.
I'm right here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm right here. Okay, so just one thing, just to respond to Mr. Craig. There's something called an LJ dam, which enhances the JDAM's capability and it gives it an airburst capability. But just to kind of finalize this, because I'm not an expert on missiles, I was just kind of commenting on the aspect of that you said that JDAMs don't have the capability to explode above above ground, so I was just commenting.
But then there wouldn't be a crater.
I'm sorry, I don't want to keep discussing this because I'm
all good. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not,
ask your question.
I'm not an expert on missiles, but I was just responding to that. Okay, so my question to Tal would be: so with your experience as a previous an Air Force commander, an Israeli Air Force commander, why does Israel not release the drone footage from the time of the strike? Why are we relying on hearsay from the U.S. government, which obviously has joint interests with Israel? Why are we fully relying on hearsay? And when Israel, every single time that they haven't done something, they're very quick to release the footage. They're very, very quick to release the footage. Why is it this time it's different, that they're only releasing footage from the aftermath, while they're very capable of releasing footage from when the actual strike happened? They could completely disprove everything just by releasing that footage and not just having Biden go out and basically say, "Oh, we don't think it's Israel." That's not an argument.
It's a good question. It's a fair question. Tal, your thoughts on this question? Tal, are you there? I think you've got an issue with your mic. You got to unmute bottom left corner. So the question that I had is whether there's been the other question I had, if anyone knows, whether there's been any images or photos or videos of the parent munition. But Tal, I'll bring you down and back up, just to fix your mic, and they can answer that question. It's a fair question. I know we've got Piotr and Noga. You've been waiting for a while. Noga, I'll let you go first, and Piotr, and it's so good to have you on the panel as well. Noga.
Thank you. To answer the last speaker's question, you can't release a video of an attack that didn't happen. That is why it can't be released, because we weren't there. Now, a couple of things. The reason why we haven't talked about being caught in the crossfire is because that's a lie. And I've been told that this is the panel where we discuss things that actually happened and not ones that we made up. There isn't a shred of evidence, not a single one at this point, that the attack on the hospital actually happened. Agent France actually released a picture from above where you can see the hospital is so intact that there aren't even scratches on the solar panels on its roof that are
bingo
with electricity. So I don't really understand why we're still having
what was the point, Noga? What was that point? So there were no photos of what? What was the last thing you said?
Attack on the hospital, that the hospital was not an attack, that the hospital was actually hurt, which is why Agent France, as I said, released an aerial picture of the hospital this morning showing it completely intact, and the only thing that was hurt was the freaking parking lot. Now, the video that Syrian girl just put on is actually from today. It's a Red Crescent video from a completely different hospital, Al-Quds hospital, and I put it up on her feed just so that everyone would see.
Can you pin it? Can you pin it at the top of the space as well? I'll be curious.
I can in a second.
Thank you.
So Israel is bombing another hospital?
No, we'll get to that. We'll get to that later.
No. I actually made a list, and I'm trying to keep it short, and I'm not wasting.
And I think in the I will let you finish. Don't worry. I'll let you finish. Just on that point you've made, Noga. So the video that Noga's referring to, Syrian girl, doesn't show the hospital being bombed. It shows like a bit far from the hospital. Now you made the point that but the hospital from yesterday was actually big. But then Noga's making the point that no, this is actually a hospital today, Al-Quds hospital, which she'll pin at the top. up, which means that if that could be another location that's close to the hospital. I'm not saying it's okay to hit targets that close to the hospital. I'm just saying that that's what it could be. It doesn't show the hospital itself getting hit in the video you've shown, Siringo. But Noga,
anyway, the video is showing a completely different hospital. It's showing the hospital from today, and no, it's not okay to put military targets this close to hospitals, and Hamas should really stop that. Now, let's go back to the fact that there isn't a shred of evidence that the hospital got hurt, and not just talk about what exactly hit it. And remember that it took Israel the better part. In fact, we're still trying to figure out the dead from the massacre of the 7th of October. So the fact that 4 hours after this alleged whatever that they say happened to the hospital, we already had 800 people in body bags in the room with the people that were doing the press conference, should have tipped someone off that something is definitely off with the report. Usually when you have this level of attack, the doctors are busy caring for the injured, not bagging the dead. So at some point we have to ask ourselves, why are we still wasting everyone's time for an hour and a half on a Hamas lie that never happened? Hamas is shooting from within.
You've made
good
points. Yeah.
Almost
done.
Go ahead. Almost done. I promise. I made a list, and I'm not repeating myself today.
Go ahead.
Anyway, Hamas is shooting from within population. The IDF released a of Hamas for that. You can just look at where the missiles were actually its population, and it's been doing it apparently. Hang on.
Yeah, and I think
it's been doing it apparently not.
And the first point about the hospital damage, because this is getting into specifics. Because now
I'm just going to say that I still have a couple more.
Yeah, we'll get back to you. I promise. I want to go because I know that Piotr and Skito just came on, but Piotr's been waiting for a while, and Veerpass as well has been waiting for a while. Tal, you're back up. Is your mic working?
Yeah, sorry, is it working?
It is, yeah, it is. So, Noga's made a lot of points, but Saif had a question for you. And Charles, good to have you, because I know you wanted to disagree with a lot of what Craig said, so it's good to have you. Saif, I'll let you ask your question to Tal, and the question that I have is, I'm going to give you two questions, and Saif will give you the third one. Have you seen any...
Didn't Saif give me the question?
Yeah. Go ahead. Saif, do you want to go first?
Yes, and before I go, I just want to applaud Noga for her amazing PR and narrative training. But moving forward, so when it comes down to the question, with your experience as an expert,
okay, I could have jumped in, but I thought
no.
So guys,
hold on.
Yeah, just to.
I don't think we need to reserve.
Yeah, no. I'll say it, Noga. Yeah, no personal attacks, everyone. I think it's. I've made this point many times, and yeah, Saif, we appreciate just no personal attacks. But I think he's complimenting you, Noga. He said you're great speaker, just in his own way. So I'll take it as a compliment.
Yes, I wasn't attacking her at all. Actually, I was complimenting her because changing like
no.
Good. Let's not. Yeah, the question for Tal. Go ahead, Tal. Saif, go ahead. Thanks,
yes, man. The question that I have is on video evidence, and the video evidence that I'm talking about is relying on.
I've already answered.
Noga, I was gonna Noga. We not to jump in. I was gonna actually mention your point, Noga. You did answer. I'll let you finish your question, Saif.
Yeah, he's an Air Force. He's a previous Air Force commander. So I'd like to be speaking with.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, the question. The question for you, Tal, is why wasn't there drone footage? Noga said that the attack.
And why every time Why is it that every time they're very quick to release the footage, they're very, very quick, but this time we're hearing hearsay? And why aren't they releasing the footage of the actual event this time? Thank you, Tal.
Thanks. I'm flattered for you thinking that I have such expertise. Sadly, I do not. Just because I was in the Air Force does not mean I had anything. Does not mean I had anything to do with drones, pilots. My position had nothing to do with anything that flies. So I don't have a professional. If you're asking my professional opinion, there is none. I have an opinion regarding maybe why they didn't release it, but that's a different question.
Sure. Yeah. On your personal opinion on that, Tal?
I think it's important to understand that while there are constantly drones hovering over Gaza, we know this not just by the IDF submissions, but also from you can actually hear. There's a type of drone that you can actually hear that's flying over Gaza constantly. It's nicknamed in Arabic the mosquito because it sounds like a mosquito flying overhead. But these things, at the end of the day, these drones are small and they don't cover the Gaza. While it is a relatively small area, it is quite large in regard to a drone. And so there is also the chance that simply the drone wasn't filming over that area where the rocket fire happened, or simply they don't want to release the footage because it goes against their narrative. It really depends on which side of the narrative you're on, where either which of those two you want to believe more.
I respect that.
Thank you for your.
Yeah, it's very.
I just have
go ahead,
follow up.
Yeah, please
follow
go ahead,
up, just really quickly. So obviously the bombing happened in the Gaza Strip. We're very familiar that the Israeli Air Force has surveillance going on over there 24 hours. So that's mainly where my question is coming from. Why they clearly had footage of the hospital the next day, and we obviously know that they keep track of everything, guys. So I just want to see the footage of this, because they've released everything but what people actually need to see to come to a conclusive decision. And they've only shown it to the United States, which is a close ally, and the US didn't even come out and condemn it fully. And we've seen a history of Israel doing the same thing and then taking accountability.
True. So Saif, that's a good point. So the point you're referring to, they did say they have footage and they're going to show it to the US, but that footage that they showed to the US, you're saying, why hasn't that been released, correct?
Yes, because we all know that there's common interest between the Biden administration.
Understand? Yeah. They both have the same. Their incentives are aligned. But the footage in Tal, if you can confirm before I go to Piotr, there is footage. I've actually got two more questions for you, Tal. But there is footage. Do you remember? I remember reading a report that they claimed they had footage that they showed to allies, including the U.S. military. Is that correct? And is that the footage that Saif is referring to, Tal?
I'm not aware. Again, I haven't been following what the IDF has been reporting, simply because it's not really as interesting to me, simply because they would have a vested interest in covering this up if they were responsible. So I don't have a comment on that.
Cool. Yeah, I think Saif, I do remember reading that they did have, unless someone disagrees, but they said they had footage and they're going to share. I know they had the recording and they shared that publicly, but you're referring to the footage. But I'll check, or maybe Saif, you can check, because I think we posted about it as well. I'll go to two more questions for Tal, and then we'll go to Piotr. Tal, Craig made a few points. He said, if this is an airburst JDAM, there should be apparent munition that would have caused the crater. And if there's apparent munition located, and by the way, I do know that, Charles, you got a lot of disagreements with Craig, so I'll go to you in a bit. But if apparent munition was located, then the story could add up. Doesn't mean it's true, it just adds up. That the apparent munition caused the crater, and the airburst caused the damage without a massive crater. Have you seen any photos or videos of apparent munition anywhere near the site?
I've seen nothing as of yet from the videos that we do have.
I appreciate that. And the second question I have is the hospital damage. Sonoga pointed out, and I think Zev pointed out the same thing, is that there hasn't been any footage or photos showing any significant hospital damage. Is that correct, or has there been verified footage showing the significant damage to the hospital?
From the footage that we have that was released by a number of different Palestinian news networks, we know that there was quite significant damage within the center of the courtyard, but we haven't seen any structural damage to the actual hospital itself. It seems more either from shrapnel or from the airburst or from something else that hit, but nothing structurally. Like the hospital itself was not hit directly, at least in that attack or that explosion. That's that. I have a few points to make.
Yeah, please go ahead. And I want to just give you, give you a shout out for how you're trying really hard to be objective, and I think you're doing a pretty good job at it. With every time you answer a question, you offer both sides to the answer. For example, he said it could be the shrapnel or it could be the airburst. Or when you asked it regarding the no man, I already blanked. The last question. Oh, the IDF. Either they have the footage, either they don't have the footage because the drone hasn't covered the area, or they have it, they don't want to release it because it goes against their narrative. So just want to applaud your objectivity there. But go ahead, I think you had more points to make.
I appreciate that. It's 2 points that were made earlier by Syrian Girl. One is regarding the actual video. I've been able to, with the help of other people online, geolocate the actual site of where the building took place. The exact site, not thing. It did occur. It occurred at the what did I write? Because I'm currently writing up a tweet for it. It happened at the Al-Quds Hospital, specifically the Red Crescent Society. And so this is one case of why it's very important to first geolocate these locations and then look at the timestamp, because these things can get spread very, very easily if we don't check these. The second is regarding Hanan Naftali, who is proposed to be, he's not the official spokesman of the IDF. He is on a media team of the Israeli army, but as I presented in my own personal analysis on my page, I do not give him any credit in terms of source or ability. I've followed him for years. He is known for immediately jumping to the what we would term the very far right Hezbollah narrative. It's very obvious he doesn't have any actual sources. A really good example of this is during the conflict in 2021, where we also had some rocket fire from the north. Immediately after that rocket fire, Hanan and Naftali came out and said that this was from Hezbollah. They tried to attack us. And then just a few minutes later, once the IDF came out and confirmed that it was Palestinian militant groups and not Hezbollah, he said, oh, no, it was actually unknown Palestinian militant groups. He is not a source. He's not someone to look into. He's not the official account of the IDF, and take everything he says with a very, very small grain of salt.
Great analysis, Tal. Thank you. Piotr, I appreciate you waiting, man. And then we'll go to Schizo and Charles. And sorry, I'll go Piotr and then Veer. Piotr, go ahead.
Thank you. Bit of a role reversal with me unmuting annoyed versus Noga being the sort of calm and collected one. Role reversal. So what I'm hearing right now is quite a lot of things. I'm going to say something. Let's take stock of what we have. We have a explosion. I'm going to use that word because we don't know what it was, in and around the hospital. At the time that we were talking in this space yesterday, most of us, I assume, thought that that was a hospital. The hospital itself had been struck. We wake up the next morning, sunlight, daylight gives us an illustration that this is a parking lot next to the hospital that has been struck. Several cars have been hit. Someone suggested a fuel truck was there. I can't see that for myself. Spoken to people on BBC Verify, and shrapnel has hit the windows. We've seen quite a few, casualties as well. Not clear deaths versus injuries, but so that's what it is. And obviously we have three actors potentially involved: Israel, the Hamas, or the PIJ, or the Islamic Jihad. Right? Doesn't seem clear for the Western perspective whether it was the PIJ or Hamas, and it's pretty clear for the Hamas side, Palestinian side, that this was the IDF. Now, I am hearing some quite interesting counter arguments to other people, some petty points about, well, your PR thing, not necessary. Other people stating that the events in Syria and others therefore illustrate that this is a lie. That's not really an argument, because you're talking about a totally different issue. What I'm hearing from people on the Israeli side is actually about the subject matter and its topic, versus other people who are sort of saying, well, it isn't really that. And then sort of picking up on details about whether it was an attachment to a JDAM or a JDAM or not a JDAM itself. It's sort of, I think, missing the extent of the point, which is that we're not entirely sure what hit this thing. For me, bottom line is that too many people went way, way off. No, I'm not targeting anyone in here. Went way, way ahead of themselves and said, well, this is that, this is that. And we've got certain people in your own team, Mario, who are saying that this is definitely not in the team right now, but other members of the team who are saying that this is absolutely 100% one or the other. And then what do? They get a very blurry-eyed bit of footage of a set of missiles being launched versus another one being dropped somewhere, and trying to make it out that is clear evidence that this was one side or the other. As far as I can tell, I still don't really know. I'm more inclined to go with the Israeli side, just because I think that the arguments in this space as a listener predominantly have been better argued. But I'm not going to take sides on this, because I think it's incredibly complicated to do so. But if you look at the evidence that has been done by OSINT, open source intelligent people, I do appreciate your the main speaker who just went before me. Sorry, brain's tired, forgot your name. Very objective, sharing information about it as a fact, and not saying he's a commander when he is, and stuff like that. So I appreciate that, and I think what we should all be trying to do is remain somewhat open-minded to whether or not it was definitely one or the other, and then come round to accepting that maybe we got it wrong. I didn't make any calls last night because I have no bloody clue. So for me, bottom line, I'm going to continue to listen to the arguments. I'll raise my hand again if I want to jump in with something, because there's only so much I can offer on the details of the military analysis. But so far for me, it's a little bit of sort of narratives versus other narratives, the fog of war, all meshed in together with actual analysis and open source intelligence that I think we should be trying to focus on. Really want to get to the bottom of what the hell happened last night. And the very last point I'll make is I agree with your point, or whoever it was who said that it's hard to see how 500 to 800 people could suddenly be calculated as the casualties unless they had a very, very clear idea of the number of occupants within the hospital, and somehow that information was released. That is quite hard to produce. So anyway, thank you very much.
I appreciate it. I think I agree. I think that's very well said. It's hard to disagree with what you said. And I think the conclusion of I was going to say the same thing as well. Like I have no idea what happened, and it's just too difficult to analyze all the information. I do want to go to Veer and then Charles. Charles, you're after Veer because I know you have a few good points to make. Saif, I see your hand up as well. Veer, what are your thoughts on what you've seen so far?
Hey, Mario.
Hey, man.
Hey, Mario. Thanks for having me. First of all, I want to go back to one thing that someone had asked the other night. Well, I believe it was yesterday. I think it might have been Brian. With the U.S. has actually bombed the wrong building. We did it in '99 in Kosovo. We bombed the Chinese embassy. We were supposed to hit it in one location, and we hit it 444 yards away. The JDAM is within 14 yards. That's how precise this is. Now, that was dropped by a B-2 out of Whiteman, and we took responsibility for it. It was an accident and all that from there. The second part that everybody's talking about is we're talking about this bomb, and some comments have been made by some people who are very intelligent, smart, and they put the planes on my airplane. These things are dumb until they put this package on it. It's literally like a dumb bomb, and there's a package on it. What happens after that is the piece that you're all taking out of it, and you've all defeated your own, or not everybody. That's not a. There's a man in the middle. There, if this was dropped, and it's not a missile, it's a bomb. It has no propulsion system. We fly it, and I'm sure everybody saw Top Gun, where they put a plane in a ridge, and they kept that missile right locked on it. That's a pilot. That's an aviator that's doing that. Because we already know that there aren't special forces on the ground lasing targets for aircraft in a FAC-A mission yet. I say that yet. And when you laze that target, that's where I put it. I remember in Libya, we took out the intelligence building. They said, take the 5th floor. They didn't say take the building. They said, take the 5th floor of a 10-story building. And we took the 5th floor. And the building still stood. These things are precise, and aviators in the middle. And I want to go back to one thing that Syrian girl said, talking about the flares. If those are flares, the assumption they're flares. First of all, JDAMs don't carry flares. It would be an aircraft, and it depends on which one it is. But they're hot. They're magnesium. They burn hotter than the jet engine. They are only released if the aviator feels that he is being lit up on the ground by a surface-to-air missile. It is a 6 to 7G high-speed turn, which you will hear for 14 miles. Because we're in full afterburner trying to get away from something and blowing flares out. And it blows not one at a time, but up to 10 at a time. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood this isn't a fire and forget weapon. There are things in the middle. And there are questions that need to be asked. And I do want to bring up one other point. When TWA when it blew up on its own, the investigations were massive. I mean, everything. They pulled everything off of the ocean floor. To this day, they still believe it was shot down by a missile off of a Navy destroyer. Even though they've taken it apart, put it together, and one of the things that came out of it is the front of the airplane fell off, and it kept climbing for 2,000 feet until it blew up. That looks like a missile. But everybody thinks it's a missile. So, perception sometimes is reality. no one is right or wrong. There's still people dead, and war sucks. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Vera. And
Can
I
I
will go
answer to him because he directed it at me?
in a bit, Siren, if you don't mind, Siren,
Could-
because I know there's a lot of points you want to address, including the footage you posted earlier. But I do want to go to
Just
Charles.
what Fair Pass said.
Yeah, I'll let you address it when you address other points. I do want to go to Charles. Charles, I know you disagreed with a few things that Craig said, so I'd love to get which points you disagreed with, Charles. Charles, are you there? No, we can't hear you. You're very far from your mic. Disconnect your Bluetooth.
How about now?
No, it's still as bad. So I'm going to mute it for a bit. I'll let you disconnect your Bluetooth or change your mic. I'll go to Syrian Girl, then I'll go to you. Syrian Girl, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. To what Fairpa said, even the pro-Israel account OzInt admitted that on the October 16th, the Israelis were flaring out of their jets. They, this footage that I showed today, which is the hospital that was bombed today, that is very obvious flares, and I think it very much resembles or is exactly the same as the footage shown on the day the Baptist hospital was bombed, which also shows flaring. And it's interesting to me that even the video that they're claiming is exposes that it's an errant missile by Hamas or Islamic Jihad, they've changed it, shows that they were flaring. So the point is, you said that, well, they're only flaring if they're afraid of air defense systems. The Israelis have admitted that that Hamas do have air defense systems. So and I think there was like a helicopter as well that was shot down, like with 50 soldiers inside, that we heard about during the war. So that discounts any notion that they weren't flaring. They were 100% flaring both times.
I
Now
didn't
again, I
say that
have
they
to point
weren't
out
flaring.
that
What I said was, if it peeled off, which is what you're looking at. And by the way, the flares don't float; they're off in 3 seconds, and you're gone. So you would hear it, you would see it. I'm not saying they didn't. What I'm
I'm saying
saying
the
is
jets
that
were.
video, the video is not a fighter jet. First of all, it wouldn't be that low if it's dropping a weapon. It's coming. It's not a deceptive or a countermeasure act, which is a very powerful, very aggressive move. Because, by the way, if we're gonna at least say it's a JDAM, a 2000, that's not a helicopter. That's
So you're
not a
saying
little
that the video that
airplane.
I posted today was also like today there was an air. So you're saying both
I
times
haven't.
there was an air
I'm talking
Hamas
about the
missile.
one that I'm talking. I'm sorry. I'm not cutting you off. I'm talking about the one that we were out to look at
That's hilarious.
today. So I'm not. I haven't seen them all. I'm talking about
So
whatever one you were looking at 5 minutes ago on that he had
now
pinned.
the claim is being made by your. So you have to be careful what you're saying. You have to look at the video, because now you're saying that both times it was an errant missile, and so you're saying both times they weren't flaring.
I only
So
saw one video and it looked like the people were going in the hospital. Please.
Sir, we're missing a very critical part of this, in that you don't if you're dropping ammunition, you're not dropping it from 500 feet or 1,000 feet, which is what that flare is done at. You're dropping it you're letting that flare go at 5,000 to 6,000.
I agree. I'm not disagreeing on that.
So you're
Yeah,
saying they weren't
exactly.
flaring today when they hit Al-Quds Hospital? That's what
No,
you're
I'm
saying. You're
saying that
saying it
you
was an
don't
errant
release
missile as
flares
well.
at 500
But I
feet.
haven't
You're not
finished.
dropping
Sorry,
munitions at 500
I
feet that are
haven't gotten
guided.
to finish my point. My point is
That is
that
incorrect.
sorry, let me finish. Sorry. So the point is that the person making the claim, the onus is on them to prove it. So what we have now is the claim that while Israel is bombing Gaza for the last 9 days, that of all the bombs that were dropped on so many buildings and parking lots, that just this one happened to be an errant missile. The people who are making this claim have to prove it, and I've seen no proof of such a claim.
And I
And
can
the
prove
second
it.
thing is,
I can
and
prove
the
it.
people who, so I just wanted to, sorry,
Yeah,
I just
babe, but the
wanted to
person
point out
making the
that
claim is Hamas,
the,
arguing
yeah,
that
No,
something
I think he's
happened. Then it
no, we haven't.
I think yeah. So go ahead, Syrian, go.
The claim of 40 beheaded babies was made, and the onus was on them to prove it.
But doesn't Syrian girl, a question to you? Don't worry. Doesn't that apply to both sides? The same way you're saying it applies to.
No, because the we're currently right now watching Israel carpet bomb Gaza, and just now we watched
Well, they're
them
not carpet bombing.
bomb near
So
another
yeah,
I
hospital
want
and flare
yes,
out.
I think
Doesn't make sense.
so
Just
Hamas is
I'll
carpet
say
all
bombing
Mario,
Gaza.
bombs
yes. I think the
and
point,
Mario,
carpet
yes, here you go.
bombs.
So the carpet bomb, you'll see significantly more deaths. You probably won't see half of Gaza right now. But your point, though, however, is they are bombing hospitals, and I've made that point as well. They are bombing hospitals. This hospital has been warned, according to the director. And apparently, you said, Cyril, that there was a strike on the roof 2-3 days ago. So it makes more sense to be Israel, but that's not enough proof. I think this is what I didn't use that to kind of come to a conclusion. I said, like, this is if this is like you make a fair point, and that's why a lot of people were initially blaming Israel. That's why Israel was really quick in responding. Within hours, Israel was like, hey, it wasn't. Within hours, it wasn't us. They've said we have footage. Within that same night, they've released, I think the recording, the voice recording was released that same night. And obviously you've had Reuters say we're getting some footage from the Israeli Defense Force. So I think they've been pretty swift in responding, considering that fact, because they are the aggressor in this case.
hey Mario, can I say
I
one
do,
more thing
yeah,
here? And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to say one
quickly.
thing. We're talking about video in this. Here's what I could tell you from an intelligence perspective. There's a lot of people on the ground who are pissed off. I can tell you, if there were fragments of this bomb all around the place, they would be all over social media. People would be picking them up, going, and we as intelligence operatives will be going, go find this stuff. We want to find it, both from the Hamas side and from the IC. Sorry.
That's it.
No, I'd like to add one quick thing. Just one quick thing, Mark. No, so
just for the speaker that was in that wanted to disagree with Craig, I know you had mic issues. If you could request again, I can't remember your username. That would be great. Please, just request.
I'm talking to him now, Mario. I'm trying to get him back.
I appreciate it, Craig. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Zev.
Really briefly, Syrian girls. So at the end of the day, no, the burden has shifted. It is up to you now to rebut and dispute the claim that are being. May I finish? I didn't interrupt you. So what I'm saying is you are wrong, okay? You made the claim, and when it was about the beheaded babies, you said, no, you have to prove it. So in this specific case, the burden has shifted to you to disprove the claims that are being not only made by Israel, but are also being backed up by the US. So you have people in here who actually have real-world experience. I am not one of them. And they are not aligning with what you said. I know Saif I don't actually, in full disclosure, know what his background is. He may be a munitions expert. That being said, the burden has shifted. If you know, that's a
May I push back on that?
Yeah,
May I push back on that?
Yeah, sure. If this was in accord. It went from some. It went from some to the hospital. It went from being flattened to now some damage, right?
Have Charles back up, hopefully. So Craig, I appreciate you bringing up someone that disagrees with you. I respect that. Charles, Charles.
So first, you guys are saying JDAM, but you're not really making any sense. A munition can have 5 components: a fuse, a warhead, guidance, and then you have a delivery system and possibly a submunition system. Get rid of submunitions. This is not a submunition. This is not a cluster bomb. This is just a general purpose bomb if it was Israeli. So there would be no carrier that you would find anywhere near there. A fuse can be anything. It can be delayed, it can be timed, it can be, airburst, it can be point impact. So to say that a JDAM airburst doesn't exist is factually false. Now, all I can say is as not a munitions expert, but as an explosives guy, if you look at the pictures, this doesn't give me an opinion of a airburst general purpose bomb or a point target general purpose bomb. If it was a point fuse general purpose bomb, you would see anything over 250 pounds. You would see a 5 to 20 meter crater. A 30 centimeter crater is not indicative of any military grade munition.
No signs.
Hang on. Now, an airburst munition would have a massive down force. You would see cars imploded, and you don't see that. The only thing you see in the pictures that are available and of what we saw last night, you see about a 30 centimeter crater and a car flipped upside down. None of that is indicative of an airburst. What you see is a ton of fire damage. And the fire damage would not be from a military grade munition. Contrary to what you see on TV, with what I have seen, this is not military grade explosives. This is not a point target destruction. This is not an airburst destruction. This is a very small bomb that went off.
So, Mario, can I respond to that very quickly?
Yeah, Charles, I think you've made. Yeah, go ahead, Craig. I think you've made good points.
So this is going to take 2 seconds.
Can I jump in after Craig?
Yes.
Sure.
This will take 2 seconds. This will take 2 seconds. The comment that I made in reference to JDAM airburst versus kinetic was made in reference to, and listen, I could have gotten over my skis, and I'm perfectly happy to admit that. The point that I made in terms of not being a JDAM is that exactly what Charles just said. So let me be honest and walk back. The fact that what I was trying to get at is if you reverse the logic and backwards this explosion out, then you completely and utterly remove any sort of guidance or kinetic strike that is on this. So if you back out the explosion and run it in reverse, then this cannot have been an airburst JDAM or kinetic, the way Charles just described it, type of munition. That is what I was trying to get at. You have to reverse the explosion, not imagine that explosion happening. You have to reverse it and then look at the damage the way Charles explained it. Thank you, Charles.
And the other thing I would say is if this was some type of military grade munitions, you would find the guidance system. The warhead, a 250 pound or 500 pound explosion would not destroy the guidance system. And you would find that strewn in that square somewhere. You would find it in the building walls.
Exactly correct.
That doesn't exist anywhere. I'm not saying this was Hamas, but I'm saying this was not a military grade explosive.
So Charles, Yehuda, I'll go to you right after. Charles, what you're saying based on your experience that this is unlikely, from what you've seen, unlikely to be Israel.
It is unlikely to be a military grade munition. And if we're assuming it's an airplane that delivered it, then it's unlikely to be Israel.
And if I could add something else too, please, Mario. If this was an
Is anyone else having
aircraft,
problems hearing?
If this was an aircraft,
if you can't drop all of
Haisha, just remove them and then bring them back up. So go ahead, Craig, and then we'll go to Yehuda. Go ahead, Craig.
I'm just going to say really quick, this couldn't have been an aircraft because that flare was somewhere between 5 to 1,000 feet in the air. If you're releasing bombs at 500 to 1,000 feet, you're doing it wrong. This precision guidance is meant to be released at low-key, high-key aircraft that are coming down at an angle and a descent. If you're flaring out at 500 feet, you are a horrible pilot. Okay, that is not the way these things. This isn't like the movies where you fly 500 feet above a target and then drop something onto it. You are flying at 1,000 to 2,000 feet in the air, maybe higher, and then dropping this precision munition. You're not going at 500 feet and dropping munition and then banking out. That is not the way it works, guys.
Thanks, Craig.
Roland starts at 10,000.
So let me go to Yehuda, and then I want to go to Saif and propaganda. Yehuda, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Mario. Look, I appreciate. I mean, you made. I just want to address one point. I think it's very clear to not move goalposts, as Benjamin already spoke about. If you say it's on the Israelis, it's incumbent upon the Israelis to prove 40 babies are beheaded, but it's not incumbent upon the Palestinians to prove that 1,000 people were killed in the hospital. You're not making any sense. So I'm just going to wipe that away. I'm not interested in that. Mario will tell you. I messaged him last night, or whatever time zone he's in, who knows. I said, look, this was an errant PIJ missile. It will come out, and the way we'll know that it's quite so serious is because in the signals intelligence community, the SIGINT capabilities of the Israeli army, the fact that they published what they did so quickly without, they sanitized it very rudimentarily. So this is a hot copy of a communication. The Israelis know where they're firing. Every single target package, every single thing that is dropped from a plane. It's not a plane issue. I don't know what people are even talking about. Planes aren't flying in at 2,000 feet or 1,000 feet.
Bingo.
With artillery being launched. I mean, it's absolutely insane. Anyone who says these things, these are people who know nothing about the military, who have no concept or understanding of anything's military. It's just propaganda. It's just nonsense. It's really, I can't even hear it anymore. It's so ridiculous. The reality is, Palestinian terrorist groups do produce rockets and missiles, not in a sanitized environment. The chances for faults and mistakes to be made are much higher than, say, in an SGS or ISO approved facility, are very high. So it's not a surprise that many of these missiles misfire. I will say what I was messaging Mario, and he can confirm, since more than 24 hours, this was a PIJ rocket. I literally said it was a PIJ rocket fired from near the cemetery, and it misfired. The warhead exploded. The propellant section of the rocket fell on a car park. It caught on fire, and there were deaths. I don't know. There certainly weren't 500 or 1,000 deaths, unless there were like 500 people sitting in a parking lot. But here's the thing: there are, and I'm not going to post anything into the nest without permission. I made a thread about it. There are other comments from Israeli sources that say, outside of the released audio communications between two Hamas members, and no one said it was Hamas, it was PIJ. Hamas even said it was PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. There are other comments saying, with an official at the hospital, pull out the bodies from the morgue and lay them out and say the Israelis killed them. Now, if you know anything about Islamic law, if you know anything about burial procedures, you'll know that there's a cleansing or cleaning ritual that's done. There were about 50 bodies that were prepared days before for burial, or in the last 1 or 2 days, they were trotted out. If you look at those body bags, I hate to call it that, but shrouds, they're lily white, pure as snow. That's not the effect or the result of people pulling bloodied and mangled bodies. This was something that was pulled out. So Hamas literally wants to take advantage of a situation because they need to create parity with the murderous rampage they did in southern Israel. And they almost succeeded in causing a regional war. For those who are confused, look at the pictures of the hospital. Thousands of people on Twitter posted pictures of cars upright, by the way, completely burnt out, and said, oh my God, they leveled the hospital. But what they don't realize is the 4 buildings in the background of the picture they posted are the hospital. The hospital was not damaged. I don't care if you want to say Hanania, Naftali posted something. He wanted to get a scoop. He wanted to get ahead of the game. He wanted to say, I know more than everyone else. Fine. He was wrong. He deleted the tweet because he did so in haste. The reality is this was a PIJ missile. It screwed up. There was collateral damage on the ground, and it caused a fire. Now, the only controversial topic I will say, or comment I will say, is I suspect, as most hospitals have, They have oxygen tanks, sometimes on the outside, especially in not as sophisticated areas. So I suspect an oxygen tank or several were hit with shrapnel from falling debris. It caused a fire. It was a flash in the pan. It burned a lot and people died. Now, if you are saying that Israel flattened JDAM, stop it. You don't know what a JDAM is. You're not in the military. You've never been in the military. You have no idea what you're talking about. Because if it was anything related to a military munition, as this fella here saying, I don't know who near it, you don't have a 30-centimeter shell scrape as a result. So, if the Palestinians want to make the claim that, well, it's because of the fact that Israel has attacked us and we fired back and a missile misfired, but it's still Israel's fault, I'm willing to hear that argument. That is an argument. But to say that somehow magically the Israelis were targeting the hospital and killed 500, 800, 900, 1,000 people, you're just being ridiculous. And the whole world sees it now. You know why? Because of the OSINT capabilities of people around the world who have no they have no dog in this race. They're saying this doesn't make sense. So on that point, I'll just say, look at the evidence. The hospital is miraculously still standing. In fact, this is the largest and most incendiary attack that destroyed a hospital that wasn't destroyed. Thanks, Mario.
I appreciate it. Saif, I want to give you the mic just to kind of give it a different perspective. I'm not sure maybe your opinion is changing after what you've heard. Would like to get your thoughts.
All right, so let's take a step back and understand something, right? So I'm hearing a lot about it being under, again, I'd appreciate you guys letting me talk, just kind of like we didn't interrupt each other when Yehuda was talking. Okay, so let me just paint this picture really quickly. It's not on Hamas or the Palestinians to prove anything, and that is not because of anything other than that they already tried to. And the videos are all responded with, we need to confirm, this is unconfirmed. So since the proof is rebutted, it only makes more sense for Israel to do so. And that, again, is not for any other reason than that they said that they have a supposed recording of Hamas talking about blowing up the hospital, right? So of course they would be monitoring that area via satellite. We already know this, and if we're being honest here, then they absolutely would. So instead of hearsay,
Let me ask you a quick question. If it's just to be specific, what are your thoughts on the fact that the hospital is still standing and there hasn't been any videos or photos to show any significant damage to the hospital? If this was a military grade missile, as we've had Charles mention earlier, just cannot be one. You wouldn't have. The building would be significantly more damaged and there'll be a bigger crater. If it was an airburst, the cars wouldn't be flipped. What are your thoughts on these two particular points?
Well, number one is that I'm not an expert on this, so let me clarify that before I continue speaking. But one thing about the JDAMs, I was only arguing the point when it comes down to that. If you're asking me what I believe about the situation happened, I believe that it was a bomb. I believe that it was I don't believe that it was a JDAM. If you're asking my personal opinion, I believe that it was a bomb. I believe that I actually agree with this statement. I think it was a small diameter bomb. I don't believe that I think that the bomb was dropped there in those specific narratives. And let me make something clear. The reason why, and I refuted this when we did the report, is that number one, it was said that it was a 1,000-pound JDAM. And if I was being biased in this situation, I would have just went with it. But no, I confirmed that it was more likely to be a 300 to 600-pound bomb. And the JDAM aspect has been multiple times in the report said that, hey, we don't know for sure if it was a JDAM, but this appears to be an air-dropped bomb. And that's my personal opinion on this. And again, I relay that I'm not an expert on this, but let me focus on what I was saying.
But sorry, Mario, can I ask why?
Excuse me, Yehuda. I didn't interrupt you.
I know your question. So he's spoken.
Yehuda?
Yeah, he's spent a few hours. So just to kind of, because I want it to be just a back and forth. He spent a few hours talking to an expert that gave an analysis why he thought it's most likely to be a JDAM. So while he's not an expert himself, he's kind of relaying that message and asking questions. So maybe say if you have specific questions, I think it would be good. Because like you asked really good questions to Tal earlier.
Yes. Let me just elaborate on this for a couple seconds, Mario. I'm not going to take up too much time.
Thanks, man.
Yes, of course. So the expert himself, he just gave probabilities. He didn't say for sure that it was a J dam. He didn't say for sure that it was a bomb. The expert gave
And you said,
probabilities,
but
and
you
he said
said, you said, Saif, you said as well earlier that you don't think it's a JDAM anymore. You think it's unlikely, correct?
No.
Oh,
I
okay.
said that the expert gave probabilities, and if you're asking my personal opinion, I'm not just going to sit here and give my opinion as a non-expert. That's completely misleading. I'm not going to do that.
Understood.
So I'm going to give what the
But you
expert
are.
said.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm
Yeah,
going
that's
to.
not
I said,
factually true. Your
No,
expert
no,
has
no, no.
no facts to back that up. There
yeah,
has
guys,
no
guys,
Please
guys.
facts.
continue
Yeah.
my
So Saif,
sentence.
quickly, I'll let
I
you
would
wrap up. Yeah,
like
go ahead,
to
Saif. I'll let you wrap up. Go ahead.
Yes, I just need 45
Please, yeah.
seconds, guys. And you guys can
Yeah.
take the mic,
Thanks, man.
okay? So the expert gave probabilities, and he said based on the videos and the footage that he saw, which was extremely limited, that he thinks it's a higher probability to be a JDAM at that specific point, but he doesn't absolutely know for certain. And he said that it's also likely to be just an airdropped bomb. Okay, so that's number one, and that's all I have to say about this. And I gave my opinion
Thanks,
already on this. And moving forward, just to continue what I was saying initially, is that if we are talking about proof and asking Hamas and Palestinians to provide that, there's absolutely no problem, right? But here's the thing. We've already seen their proof and they don't have the capability. And since we've identified that Israel was already surveilling the area because they have phone
But the
calls of
phone calls,
Hamas
but the
supposedly
phone
bombing the
call, but the
hospital.
phone calls, them intercepting a phone call communication is different to having a drone over that area because the phone calls could be via
Well, they had
headquarters.
word on it. They had word on it, Mario. So when they have word on something, they
Nah,
usually
so that
monitor the
the
area.
recording
What
that
does that
no,
even
the
mean?
recording that I heard is post the explosion. They were trying to figure out where that rocket came from. So when I listened to the recording, it sounded like it was after the rocket,
Sure,
after the
but
explosion.
the point that
Can
I'm
I
trying
give a
to
few
make,
Yeah,
updates?
this was just a side.
yeah. So let's go to
And
Tal. Yeah, I'll go. So if you don't mind, I'm just gonna go to Tal because he does have a few updates, and I see a lot of hands up. We'll go to you. So Tal, you had a few updates.
Yeah, first I got in touch with an individual who does have experience with drones in the Israeli Air Force. It says that one of the explanations could be that the drones do not keep the footage on board, so they're essentially on autopilot most of the time, just collecting information, and they delete it afterwards. So that could be one of the explanations. Something that I think is important, I want to know whether or not Mario can ping this on his...
Sure, feel free to pin
I'm
it. I'm
trying to...
opening it up for pinning if you want to pin it.
Okay. It's not to attack personally, but I think that there's something that we've kind of skipped over completely. Nogo still has her post. I'm doing the share to the space. It's not going. I don't know how to do that.
Okay, you want to pin something? You just click on share and
Yeah.
then click on the space, which should be the first option at the top.
Yeah, I'm doing share to space, but it's not going. We'll forget that for now.
Yeah, I see. Is that this video?
It's glitching, Mario.
Oh, okay,
Glitching.
okay. If you want to retweet it and I'll find it on your profile, just retweet it.
Okay, so I'll retweet it. I've showcased now, without a doubt, I was able to geolocate the exact location that Syria girl professed to say that it was the bombing of the hospital from yesterday. That is now proven false. She has not deleted the post. She has kept it up, and she is still trying to use it as proof of the bombing. And as someone who, as I can tell from her, she's very passionate about trying to showcase the truth of what occurred right there. I would expect, as someone who values the truth, to delete the video that she posted and issue an apology for not just stating this is a new video that alleges to show Israel bombing the hospital. You said this was the smoking gun that proves that Israel bombed the hospital, when all it took me was less than 10 minutes to figure out that this had nothing to do with that hospital. And so I think it is very important for all analysts to also criticize one another and make sure that we are all factually reporting responsibly.
Sure. May I respond to that?
Yes, go ahead, Hugo.
Yes. So the reason why it's a smoking gun is because the flares are the important
Stop with the flares. Stop.
No,
That makes no sense.
So
the flaring is the most
So
important.
on your point of the hospital, so you confirm this is false. It's not the actual hospital.
This also
it's Al-Quds Hospital. Yes, I agree.
No,
I agree.
I'm sorry, that is not what you said.
Yes.
You said I'm
no,
going
she
to
agrees.
quote
No, I think she agrees with you. She said she agrees that it's
No. She's saying she focuses on the flares and that no, it's actually
yeah.
But on your post, on your thread, you still claim that it is the Al-Shah, and you have not made a statement showcasing that it is not. You have kept up that video.
I will make it more clear that this is Al-Quds Hospital, and I have to just mention something very important, guys. What was said here today, one of the experts said that a pilot that flares at that altitude is an idiot. So, there's no way that the Israelis would be flaring and all of this stuff. So, in that sense, that person that said that, I don't remember who it was, is
That was
essentially
me.
saying that today's bombing is also an errant Hamas rocket and it wasn't an Israeli bomb because it couldn't possibly be that the Israelis were flaring. So, I just want to point out how ridiculous that is, and now also about the size of the bomb.
So I did
2
it
days
on
ago,
the first question. Sorry, just you
Yeah.
made a first point just before you go to the size of the bomb. So your first point, Syrian girl, what he's saying is that they're trying to understand what you said. So you're saying the flare can be that high. Why is that? Because there's other bombs that show the flare is that high.
Yeah, I can.
No, what I'm saying is that someone here.
Yeah,
made the
Craig.
claim
So Craig,
that
So Craig made. So let me explain to the audience.
Craig,
So Craig made the claim just for the audience. Craig made the claim that when there's a flare, the flare that was shown in the Al Jazeera live video, there's a flare on the top left corner, and that flare, which many people said, hey, this is the jet. He's saying this is too high to be the jet because it wouldn't be at that altitude.
Too low.
Too low. My bad. Too low to be that jet because the pilot would be an idiot to have to be at that height, at the altitude to fire a rocket. Or fire a missile. So Syrian girl, you're saying,
or they would drop a bomb. So yeah. So the way it would work is, so I'm just telling you. So this is what I did for 5 years in the United States Navy. Okay, this is all that I did. Okay, I went to air traffic control school in Pensacola, Florida. I graduated. I then worked with military aircraft and military operating areas. I know what I'm talking about. This is actually public knowledge. You can actually go online and find how this stuff works. So let me explain to you how this works. If you are an aircraft, forget they're Israeli. If you're in an aircraft and you're conducting a low tactical strike, right, which is what is being accused of Israel to be, okay, and you're flying at 500 feet, you're traveling at somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 to 300 knots. You are going really, really fast. And for you to drop a munition going 500 feet, ignoring Yehuda's point about the fact that there's ordnance in the air, the fact is that if you're dropping dumb munitions, so let's just say this is a dumb bomb, okay? If this is a dumb bomb and you are an Israeli aircraft that's traveling at 500 to 1,000 feet, which is the approximate altitude of what you claim to be this flare, you're traveling at 500 knots, which means that the flare, 300 knots, which means that the flare itself will travel directionally in the same way the aircraft is going counter backwards. So what you have to imagine is that you're flying forwards because jets don't fly side to side. You're flying forwards, you release your munitions, right? And then, according to your physics, the plane then banks, which means the munition would have had to been released prior to the flare, which means the explosion would have happened prior to the flare. Your physics and your math does not make any sense. This is not the way tactical airstrikes are done. And if Israel is dropping munitions, dumb munitions, it is the first time I'm seeing it, because what they drop are very precision munitions. They are not dropping dumb ordnance.
But what I'm saying is the video
May I
pointed
jump in,
out
Mario?
today.
I have a
Hang on,
point
let me answer
specifically
to that.
about Craig.
I'll let Syrian girl respond. We'll go to
The point is that today's video,
whoever spoke.
Today's video, which I posted, shows exactly the opposite of everything you've said and contradicts you. It shows them flaring, and then it shows the bomb after the flare.
Okay,
and it shows them
then I
flaring
trust.
at a low altitude.
Okay.
So the thing
then I
is,
trust
and
okay.
by the way, planes can yaw, right? They can go sideways because they can yaw. So
that's
all
not
of this,
300 knots.
I have to
Stop.
God.
You don't know aeronautics. Stop.
He doesn't know anything.
I'm actually
know
a pilot,
aeronautics.
by the way. I'm a pilot. I was trained as a pilot.
That's baloney.
Okay,
hold on.
Private pilot. So
just hold on here. So that's news, right? You're a pilot. So why don't you finish up your points, Syrian girl, and then let the two other people rebut it. Yeah. Go ahead, Syrian girl.
Yeah, I'm not a commercial pilot or anything like that, but I have been trained to fly planes.
Okay. So then I will give your video. Hold on, wait a second. I will give your video as much credence as your last time you said something was a smoking gun and has been disproved.
Well, it is a smoking gun. It shows that you're flaring before you bomb. And the point is that you guys claim that there wasn't.
That makes no sense.
It's nonsense. The Al Jazeera video shows.
I didn't mean to do that. I really didn't mean to do it. So let's just try to go one at a time and have the back and forth. Syrian girl, could you wrap up your point? Then I'd like them to be able to respond to it. Thank you so much.
To talk about the second point is about the size of the bomb. The claim was made that this is not a military bomb because it's a small bomb. It just happened to like blow up an entire parking lot, but it's a small bomb. But nobody discounts the fact that 2 days prior, nobody has contradicted the fact that Israel did bomb the hospital roof, and that was a small bomb. It completely agrees with the narrative that what I'm saying is they purposely bombed the car park because they wanted the hospital to evacuate, as they have been demanding 4 days. So this notion that, oh, it's not a military bomb, it's ridiculous.
I have to leave, Mario. So I'm just going to say this, and I have to drop out. Okay, I am telling
Wait,
you,
Craig. Before you leave, I want to ask you a question specifically, if you don't mind. I'll be brief.
yeah, I'm leaving. I'm leaving in like 10 minutes, guys. So I'm just
Craig, make your point, and then Prop, you can ask him the question.
Yep. Okay, so there is no munition that is used by Israel that makes the impact that shows. Your argument is done. It's over. It's complete. It doesn't matter about your flares. It doesn't matter about this.
That's
no.
opinion.
You don't know about any of this stuff. You don't know about it.
Syrian girl, let him finish. No, Syrian girl.
Okay, I am sorry. I am sorry.
Let
I
him
have
finish.
trained pilots. I have been on the ground. I have communicated with these guys. You can laugh all you want. You can come check my ribbon stack if you don't believe me, okay? I buried military veterans when I was in the service, so laugh all you want. But I'm tired of listening to this garbage. That explosion crater is nothing. That is explosion crater.
Non-explosion crater.
There is no explosion. The fragmentation, the blast radius, the way that the force of the flame, the force of the kinetic strike that is released is nothing. That is nothing. That is the equivalent of, what would you say, Yehuda? 105? Maybe a little bit less.
A Molotov cocktail.
A Molotov cocktail. But if you're traveling, hold on, wait.
centimeter
And I have the
hole.
physics.
Come on.
And I have the physics to back this up. If you're traveling at 300 knots, okay, let's assume you're traveling at 200 knots. You have two impacts. One is the kinetic strike of the explosion, and then the force that you are releasing that munition at. The math you are describing, and I'm tired of listening to this. This is such baloney, and I'm sorry to say, I don't mean to offend anybody here, but there are 17,000 people here that deserve the truth, and there are people here that know what they're talking about. Propaganda, please go ahead with your question. I have to
I appreciate it. Propaganda, you got to stop unmuting while someone's speaking. You got a lot of feedback sound on your end. Go ahead.
Oh, I apologize for that. Can you guys hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, man. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this question is specific to Craig and the other experts in here. Yesterday, I did, like many people, I bought into the reports that it was possibly a JDAM, a heavy payload that potentially airbursted. I no longer hold that view based on what I've seen and what I've heard. I don't know what happened, but what I'd like to say, because you mentioned earlier that it would be news to you if the Israelis were using unguided bombs. I made a video that I posted today, and I sourced my information from a Business Insider article that was posted 2 days ago, so one day before the explosion at the hospital. And this Business Insider article was detailing how the Israelis were rigging unguided bombs to their Air Force jets, and they were speculating. They were asking questions. Why would this be the case? And one of the speculations, and this is not my opinion, this is just from what I've read, one of the speculations is that, they dropped 6,000 bombs in the last week, and they may have either run out of precision, which I doubt, but they may be conserving it, right, those JDAM precision guided bombs, in case they escalate with Hezbollah and they need to save those weapons there. Based on this Insider article, there's evidence that the Israelis are rigging unguided bombs. What I want to ask you...
Hold on. I have an answer. Let me...
I know you do. Just let me finish. I know you do. And I trust your judgment and your expertise. The evidence, which I can't prove, it's just a Business Insider that's reporting on it. But what I want to ask you, the unguided bombs in a densely populated area, due to its inaccuracy, does it or does it not kill more casualties, civilian casualties? Yes or no?
So if you're using unguided munitions, it always depends on where the impact of that munition is. So it may cause less, it may cause more. It depends on what is in the radius of that munition.
Right. So, but would it cause, statistically, I suppose, is it more likely to kill civilian casualties than a precision guided bomb?
It's part of United States Navy policy. You can read it online that you are not to use unguided munitions in an urban or where collateral damage may be exposed, because that's against the rules of war that the United States is a part of. And I would say this: I am looking at the photo that you are describing. I am looking at it now. That bomb that you're describing, first of all, hasn't been confirmed release. And second of all, I'm looking at that photo, and that munition that you're looking at is easily a 500 plus pound bomb. And if that is being dropped, and again, I would urge you to say
I'm not saying it was dropped on the hospital, but my point
Okay.
is that the Israeli Air Force is using unguided bombs in Gaza, which does
that is
kill
incorrect. No, because you don't have.
Where do you get that from?
That is
I'm
that
getting it
that
from the
that doesn't
Business
say that's
Insider
not what the
article.
post says.
I'll clarify.
That's not what the post
I'll
says.
clarify. Let me clarify. I don't want to disrespect or debate anyone. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying the Business Insider article wrote this. They could be wrong, but their evidence that they're providing comes from OSINT technical Twitter account.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Hold
I'm reading it right now.
And they're showing. Okay,
Yep,
good.
I'm looking
So
at it.
you'll see what I'm citing, and they're showing images supposedly, and I could be wrong,
Yep.
but this is them.
Okay.
They're showing pictures of the Israeli Air Force from their account where they are rigging. Now, is the Israeli Air Force posting the wrong picture? Potentially, but that's from their account. The Israeli Air Force is showing pictures of unguided bombs being rigged to their jets. So is it possible they're using it? I think so. And is it possible that that kills more civilians than precision? Yes, I think so. What do you think?
Okay, so let's start back at the premise. Okay, here is the premise. The premise is that this was an Israeli Air Force video that was put out there. You can go and look at it. Propaganda is 100% correct. You can look at that video on Twitter. And the one thing you will notice as you watch that video is that that if you look at the aircraft, this is clearly a propaganda all go no quit video. This does not show current aircraft that are being rigged with unguided munitions and then is dropped. What you're seeing in the video is a hard rock like thing from the Israeli Air Force saying the Israeli Air Force is big and bad. It does not show, number one, munitions are being rigged for the current conflict. You don't know what that video and how old that video is. Number two, you are not saying that they're being dropped because there is no evidence of unguided ordnance being dropped. Number three, you are not tying the video and the unguided munitions to civilian casualties. What you're doing is you're taking a hard slamming guitar riff that's going up and down the guitar saying, "Yeah, the Israeli Air Force." Da, 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 da. You're not time stamping it. You're not showing that it's being used. The aircraft that you're actually demonstrating, the aircraft that's actually being flown, okay, is probably at about 15,000 to about 10,000 feet in the air, maybe scraping flight altitude 18,000. So last time I checked, unguided munitions dropped at altitude going 300 knots do not land where you want them to land. And if you are the Israelis, you are not getting them where you need them to be. So this whole video about unguided munitions is not confirmed in any source other than the Israeli Air Force put out a rock hard video about badass.
So Craig,
Israeli
quick question.
pilots.
Why would just on that, guys?
May I respond?
Yeah, 2 seconds. Yeah, prop. I want to ask you a question on that particular point. By the way, Craig, Charles, Yehuda, Tal, and others, like you've all made really good points, and I actually enjoyed this and impacted where I stand on this. But the question I have for you is, why would they put an unguided missile in their propaganda? If anything, they should do the exact opposite.
Yeah.
If they're using unguided missiles, they'd use them without actually making it public.
When's the video made, Mario?
Hold on. I have an answer. I have an answer.
Okay, but I'd like to respond.
Yeah, when's the
after
video?
Craig,
Yeah,
if
prop
you don't
quickly.
mind.
When's the video made? And then we'll get Craig to respond. Do you know, prop?
Okay.
Go ahead.
So listen, look, Craig raises a very valid
No, do you know when
point.
the
it is a proper
prop?
It was.
Do you know when the video was
article
made?
is
2 days ago. Okay.
The article is 2 days ago. The video could be 5 days ago. I don't know.
Okay.
But
5 years?
Days.
Craig, days.
No, but when
Craig,
was the video made? He said it could be made 5 days ago. Come on.
No, the post.
Let's
the
be
post,
honest.
The post was 5 days.
My friend.
Forget about the post.
No, but Yehuda, we can't. But Yehuda, we can't know.
Guys,
we can't.
please,
Yeah, go ahead,
guys,
prop.
please,
But we can't.
So, but Mario,
Please,
do you think the Israeli
please.
Air
I'm trying
Force
to
is
be.
going-
I'm
No,
trying
hold
to
on,
be.
hold on.
Guys,
Mario,
I think, guys, everyone speak at the same time. So Yehuda, quickly, I'd like to ask a question, then prop to go to Craig, because Craig has to jump off.
So all I'm saying is that the Israeli military in a war is promoting itself through PR, public affairs. Is it so crazy to think that they're putting their best foot forward and showing their stuff? Why would you do a precision-guided missile attack on a PR video and spend $1 million? No, you just use a
No, the
dummy
PR.
bomb.
The PR video was actually them bombing, or was just them loading the missile prop?
No, it was just
Loading.
no. That's what I'm trying to say. This is a
Just
training.
loading.
Yeah, but why would
This is a
they?
training-
But why would they?
No, it's both.
I'm looking
it's
at
both.
it.
It's
This
both.
is a
But listen,
training.
listen.
Okay, go ahead, prop.
Can I
Go
make
ahead, prop.
my
Yeah, go
point?
ahead, prop.
Can I make my
Yeah.
point? Guys, listen. Craig, Yehuda, you guys raised valid points. I cannot prove that the bomb they showed in the video is the bomb that was dropped. And I don't know how I would prove that. I really don't. What we do know for a fact is that there are civilian casualties. And what I'm proposing to you is that while you're saying that we cannot know for a fact that this bomb in the video was dropped, I could reverse the question and say, you don't know that it wasn't dropped. And I'm not saying that you're wrong.
But you're
I'm not
making the
saying that
claim.
I'm right. But the claim is coming from an article,
Okay, I have
Western
an
mainstream
answer.
media,
Go
that is
ahead, Craig. Yes,
posting
yeah. I
the
think
I have to go.
Israeli Air
I have to
Force.
go.
yeah, go ahead, Craig.
I
Yeah, Craig, I'll let you respond
I'm just
quickly.
gonna
Go ahead,
tell-
Craig.
Yeah, I have to go. I'm just going to simply tell you that these bombs are rigged all the time for what are called training missions in what are called military operating areas. When you're training as a pilot, you're trained on two things. You're trained to use smart bombs and you're trained to use dub bombs. If you go down to military operating areas, they actually have, if you're flying at 10,000 feet, you will actually see enormous bullseyes that pilots are coming down at an angle. And number one, you release bombs not at a side, not going sideways. And this is the other thing I had to get off my chest. When you're releasing munitions, you're not doing it 300 knots going this way. You're actually doing it at altitude, coming down at an angle of 5 degrees or less. Because as you come down, right, then you release the munitions explode, and then you pull out. If you're releasing it at a horizontal way, you're doing it wrong. You have no idea what you're doing. You have no business to be in a cockpit.
I hear you. And I'm not saying they hit the hospital.
Right, but hold on, let me
So
finish.
I just
Let me
want to
finish. The
clarify
munitions
that. I
that
just
you're
want to
seeing,
clarify that.
stop. The munitions that I'm looking at are the exact same munitions that you will see on U.S. military training aircraft, whether you be on the west or the east coast, because you were trained to drop dumb munitions as a U.S. pilot. And I would assume the same thing goes for an Israeli pilot. You are trained to drop these munitions. And I just have to just conclude, and I'm going to wave off and go bye-bye. If you are coming down with a dumb munition, because I'm just telling you this is the way it's done. You come down at an angle of 5 degrees, you release your munition, and then you bank out, okay? Which means the explosion happens prior to the bank, or excuse me, just after or prior to the bank out, because your munitions are now traveling faster than you are, which means the explosion would happen as the pull happens, or even before that, because you are going to pull out way higher than 500 feet. You're going to pull out at about 2,000 feet. If you're going 250 knots, that hard deck is coming really, really fast. Okay, you're going to be there like that. So if you're dropping dumb munitions, number one, this video shows a training exercise. That's what, if you look at the munition and you look at the markings on the munition, if you look at that munition, it has a clear symbol, and the warhead of that munition is clearly unlabeled. If you look at that yellow circle that's around that munition and then the number that's on that, it is spray painted green, and it is a munition that is dropped as a targeting exercise for pilots that are trained. I have to go.
Thank you for that information. I appreciate it. Mario, can I just respond?
Yeah, go ahead, man. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So, Craig, thank you for that information. So there's a couple of things that I want to say, and please try not to interrupt me. I know it must be infuriating that a pleb like myself would, question you with your expertise, and I'm not being sarcastic.
I'm making 60 grand a year.
I can see.
Okay,
I'm not being sarcastic.
So,
I think he's actually meaning it genuinely. Go ahead, Prop.
No, he's not.
No, I think I've had him. No, I've had him on panel before. He's actually being genuine. Go ahead, Propaganda.
Thank you. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, so I'll be more careful with my words. Listen, I don't know why they posted that video, but you're saying they potentially use it for training. Training to do what? To actually drop it. So that's the first thing. The second thing, the video is not posted. Okay, so we accept this premise that they train with unguided bombs to potentially drop those bombs. And what I'm trying to say is the Israelis, they didn't post this video in the context of training. It's in the context of we're ready, we're rolling out, we're working day in, day out to protect the Israeli people. That's the context that the video was posted in.
That doesn't make sense, man.
So, guys, I do.
Fine, fair enough. My last point.
Yeah, quickly, Propaganda, very quickly, please. Because there's a lot of there's a lot of developments on the northern front with Hezbollah that I want to address. I think it's getting a bit important. Go ahead.
Hey, Mario, thank you for the
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks,
Craig. Go ahead. Go ahead, Propaganda.
Thank you, Craig.
Thanks, Craig.
So my last point segues into the point about Hezbollah. We have seen in Russia and Ukraine the amount of weapons being dropped. They tap into other inventory. And with the Business Insider article, which interviewed other experts such as yourselves, they're speculating that the reason why the Israelis are tapping into unguided bombs, not necessarily because they don't care about civilian life, I have my opinion about that, but the reason why they're tapping into it is because they dropped so many bombs. And they need to potentially save those precision bombs for Hezbollah. So what I'm proposing is that we have to consider, fine, that's your opinion, but we have to consider that the Israeli Air Force posted this video.
Propagandist, this is just pure speculation, buddy. You can't take assessments.
I concede to that.
I'll let you. Yeah, sure. Propaganda. I'll let you. Yeah. Propaganda. Yeah, I'll let you finish propaganda, and then Yehuda, I'll let you reply, and then we could move on to the.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
My final thing that I'll say that it is speculation, and that speculation is caused by the Business Insider article speculating based upon what the Israeli Air Force posted. So you're right, it is speculation, and it's caused by
based
the
on
Israeli Air
substance and
Force.
fact.
All
All right,
right.
guys. So let's go.
And
Let's
the
go.
fact is that they showed video of them rigging unguided
No, I
bombs.
think
So it's not
I
ridiculous.
think the
That's all
argument,
I have
yeah.
to
So
say.
propaganda, yeah. Look, I think a lot of what we've said today is speculation. You know, we've had experts here like Charles and others kind of speculate on what it could be, and I think even Charles was very careful with the words he used. Like, and they say it's not the Israeli military. They said cannot be. What was it? Military grade. What was the statement you made, Charles? You were very precise in the statement you made. And if it was dropped from a jet and from an Israeli jet, then it cannot be an Israeli jet. What was it?
I said it was highly unlikely that it was a military grade munition dropped from the air.
Yeah, so I think so. This is trying to be as specific as possible. So propaganda. Your point of this being an unguided missile, a cheaper unguided missile, the one that was in their photo, and that could have. So what you're doing is it doesn't say that dropped on the hospital. It's saying there's a possibility Israel has ammunition, has munitions that could cause the damage that we saw in those videos. Now, by the way, I'm just trying to clarify what a propaganda statement is. After this discussion, obviously my position has shifted, and I think it's just the narrative has shifted significantly since yesterday, and we've got an incredible panel kind of breaking it down for us. But my conclusion is that this is going to continue being polarizing for a very long time. Yehuda, I'd love to get your response to propaganda. And Yehuda, I've got a separate question to you. We're seeing develop, I'm not sure if you've got any more updates for us, but we're seeing the Northern Command, the Israeli Northern Command evacuating more citizens 5 kilometers away from the border. It was 3 kilometers yesterday. Evacuation within 3 kilometers from the Lebanese border. Now it's 5 kilometers.
Another 15 settlements, towns evacuated.
Yeah,
Correct.
your thoughts on that?
I'll address that first. So Israel, since day one on the 7th of October, looked to the north. They didn't look at this as a Hamas operation. They looked at it as a Hamas, HEZBOLLAH, Iran, Russia operation, right? So the contacts I have said we're concerned not about Hamas. Hamas is not. So they did a dastardly, horrible attack. They murdered a bunch of civilians, 1,500 of them. It never happened since the Holocaust. But the real issue is what would happen if Iran unleashes 5, 10, 15, 7,000 rockets against Israel. So the individual I spoke with on the 7th said the concern from the Israeli side is Hamas is intending to deplete Arrow missile interceptors. That's part of their Iron Dome, David Sling, yada yada. And the Americans stepped up and authorized the drawing of interceptors from their strategic reserves, which are located in Israel, Tel Shomer Air Force Base. And then they replenished them within 2 days, actually. It was the Monday. Lloyd Austin authorized that. So the Israelis aren't concerned, as far as I know, of a ground incursion from Lebanon. They're concerned about a missile attack. Why? Israeli natural gas, oil, whatever, in Haifa, strategic, and all sorts of other locations. So this is the Israeli concern in the north. Now, the Americans exercise all sorts of very potent gunboat diplomacy, and when I say gunboat, I mean carrier boat diplomacy. However, with this hospital ruse, and I say it's a ruse, I mean, for everyone listening, it's very simple. Look at the hospital. It still exists. It's intact. So anyone who keeps rambling on about the Israelis who JDAM, not a JDAM, a mortar, I actually don't think it's a mortar. I don't even think it's a bomb. It's nothing launched by air. And frankly, I'm not going to trot out my, my credentials. Mario knows what they are. This was the fuselage or the part of a rocket that misfired, that crashed. The propellant ignited a few cars. The few cars ignited possibly an oxygen tank. And there are deaths, obviously, but the Palestinian Islamic Jihad are part. And I see you putting a thumbs down, and I don't really care. If you've never been in the military in your life, which you haven't, you don't have really any premise or position to question me on it. Craig was very clear. This is an aircraft. Aircrafts don't fly at 500 meters above the ground and launch, while artillery strikes are happening. It doesn't make sense.
So I want to go back. So, we are getting.
Sorry.
Just I want to move back to the first point you made.
I don't want to go down.
Because I'm just getting reports
Mario,
now.
I need to go.
Yeah, Tal. Of course. And Tal, it'd be good to get your final thoughts on this after Yehuda.
Right, I'll wrap up.
Go ahead, Yehuda.
I'll wrap up. So when it comes to the north, yes, Israel's super concerned about flare up on the north. Now, attacks on northern Israel by Hezbollah are it's like a Tuesday in the Middle East, right? However, they are ramping up. The benefactors of Hezbollah, the Islamic Republic, have said, we won't do anything unless you do this or this or that. However, with the fake news propagated by, unfortunately, many people and many organizations, I think that they may feel they've reached the critical mass in which to do a thing. If they should do that thing, my fear is not a land incursion. So the Israelis are more concerned mortars and bombs. They want to evacuate their northernmost communities because the Iron Dome isn't going to be able to protect them. Why? Because if you think of a parabola, the ability to protect those northern communities, that if you do this thing, we will do that. So yes, they've evacuated, but that's only out of an abundance of caution. I don't think it will happen personally. Thanks, Mario.
So if I could, two people. I want to ask Alex.
Yeah, before going, Alex, I know you're going to go, Alex, just because I know Tal just jumped in and said he needs to jump off, Zev. So I thought I'll ask him one final question. And then go to Hadi for an update on the southern border in Lebanon, because I'm hearing updates I've just posted now. Israel striking targets in Syria and Lebanon. So Syrian State TV did say, and I've just posted it now, Syrian State TV did say that the Israeli Air Force struck an unknown target in southern Syria. And then the Israeli Air Force, IDF, said is now attacking targets of Hezbollah. Before that, Tal, just wanted to get your final thoughts on the hospital. I think you've given us a great overview, but on the entire war, where you think will be in a few weeks, in a few months' time. You think the ground operation is imminent, not questionable anymore? And do you think Hezbollah would get involved, which is the big question that everyone's is trying to decipher right now?
So I think that there is a good chance that Hezbollah could get involved. I mean, the fact that the United States brought 2 aircraft carriers and the British brought 2 warships showcases that there most likely was a serious threat behind the scenes that we as the public weren't really aware of. I mean, the hope of the matter is that this ends as quickly as possible. I think there's a lot of pain and suffering going on with Israelis and Palestinians right now that is very hard to mend, and calls for blood are something that are quite continuous in these situations. But it does seem that the Israeli government, despite what we are hearing, does seem that they're trying to push off an invasion, at least Prime Minister Netanyahu, based on what I've seen, the fact that they supposedly were supposed to be going in last Friday, Saturday, but then he keeps inviting foreign ministers and foreign leaders, which essentially you can't start a ground invasion when you have that. And I think more pressure will be put on the government to release hostages, which will stop an Israeli ground invasion, because if Israel goes in, there's a very good chance that Hamas and other militant groups will kill the hostages simply as retaliation for the ground invasion. Or we're simply seeing the IDF essentially building up its capabilities over the next few days and then start an invasion. Hopefully the latter is incorrect.
Yeah, so Tal, I think it's a great overview and good to have you. And again, great thread on the hospital explosion. One last thing is I want to go to Hadi just for an update on the ground in South Lebanon. You've always got the latest update. Thanks, Tal. You've got the latest updates, Hadi, on that border, because I'm getting a bit concerned. And it's like every day that passes, my concern around an Hezbollah-Israeli conflict rises. So I want to get your thoughts, Hadi. And I know your position from the beginning was that Hezbollah will get involved, but just not yet.
Yes, so today we had around between 4 to 5 Hezbollah attacks on Israeli positions by rockets and shooting guns as well. So they named every operation and the names of 2 martyrs they lost the past few days. So 2 Hezbollah soldiers were killed. And so that's obviously retaliation to the killed. One of them was a response to the Israeli aggression on Lebanese territories. So now Israel is firing back, and apparently there's an airstrike that happened around 40 minutes ago, and some people are saying UAV light on some position in South Lebanon. It's not near civilian areas, but I think it's a position there that they regarded for Hezbollah, but I don't think so. Al Mayadeen reported that it's a monument for Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general who was assassinated by the US in 2019. So there was a monument there on the border, so I think they targeted that one for some reason. Until now, everything's calm, but I do expect we're going to see a little bit of
Adi, would you say the
happening.
clashes now ignore the whole narrative of whether Hezbollah will get involved when Israel enters Gaza or later throughout the war? But the clashes that we're seeing now, is it the normal clashes we always see, or is it are they...
I wouldn't say that, Mario. Hezbollah already lost 10 soldiers, and Merkava tanks are being evaporated on the borders. That we've seen that last time in 2006. So I don't think these are normal clashes as before. They're escalating day by day, and if they're probably gonna stay like that for the next, I don't know, days. Nothing. I don't think there's gonna be any dramatic changes until we see what happens in Gaza if the Israelis invade it. Other than that, I can say that things are going to escalate a bit further every single day when it comes to that. They're going to kill here, they're going to kill there. That's it.
Zev, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Alex just very briefly. News today, has your opinion changed at all? And then I wanted to ask Firas a question because I think it's important not to ignore what's going on in the West Bank. It's a very tense situation there, and I know he's in Ramallah, and I think it's important for context to see what the atmosphere is like there.
Yeah, so just to give you an update, Alex, just so you got the latest developments. So we did see Hezbollah strike Israel back earlier today. And the Hezbollah struck back and they hit that monument, as Hadi said. We did Syrian State TV is reporting a strike in southern Syria. We also have the British Foreign Office, and I'd love to get your thoughts when we have, and the Saudi, I think Saudi, whatever Foreign Office, whatever you want to call it, also made a similar statement advising citizens to leave Lebanon. So Saudi did that, and then the British Foreign Office did this as well. Is that normal considering what's happening in Lebanon, or does that show increasing fear that Hezbollah will get involved and there'll be war in Lebanon?
That's 100%. That's 100% normal, especially the Gulf countries. They instantly follow each other when it comes to the banning of traveling to Lebanon.
100%. Which one? That Hezbollah might get involved,
the Gulf.
or that what?
That the Gulf countries, anything that happens in Lebanon, even small skirmishes in some, for example, inside the Palestinian refugee camps that had nothing to do with the Lebanese people, you'll see the Gulf Arab countries doing this ban on travel. And the ban actually was not lifted from a long time ago. They always warned about it since we had this diplomatic crisis with these countries. So it was always there.
I appreciate
like
it.
This
I appreciate all the facts, Hadi. Alex, would love to get your thoughts, and I'll mention more developments throughout the show.
Sure. So I'll add on to what you were just talking about, because while you raised Saudi Arabia, there's actually more countries that have called for their citizens to leave. So it's the United States, the United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, Canada, France, Kuwait, the Netherlands, Spain, Germany, and Australia. And if you look at the countries that are making that up, right, again, this is speculation. I'll just be honest with you. I'll tell you what's informed and what's actually just my speculating here. That is the core group of a lot of the NATO countries, right? I don't know if anyone knows anything about what's going to happen, but they're all asking their citizens to leave. It's obvious that there's developments along the front there. It's still nothing but skirmishes at this point. But I think there's a couple things that happen. So before addressing the hospital strike, and regardless of who did it, and it's regardless for the statement I'm about to make, there has been pent-up anger in the Arab world for a long time, and in Iran for that matter, at Israel and the policies and its application towards the Palestinian territories since 1948. That's across the board. I think it was very clear in talking to folks here. There may be some exceptions, which would be awful. That I think everybody agrees that 1,400 people killed the way they were was absolutely horrendous. There was still a lot of anger going towards retaliation. And then last night, everything boiled over. That anger that had been repressed when there was reports of hundreds of Palestinians being killed at a hospital last night, you saw the protests break out across the Middle East. And it was repressed anger that was coming out over years of policies and treatment that was, that people have had a disagreement with for obvious reasons. So I think that's the cause for concern, and that political pressure. Does that then lead to action where Hezbollah ends up getting involved? It is possible, and as the previous speakers have mentioned, I think it'll depend on what happens during the ground incursion that I still believe is going to occur, and what the reactions to that is. So I'll pause there, Mario, in case you have any questions on that. Otherwise, I'll move to hospital strike.
Last one. Did you say hospital strike? Oh, you want to talk about the hospital strike? Yeah, sorry. Oh, okay, I understand. The minister.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, I'll go to Yehuda.
You said pent-up anger.
Go ahead, Yehuda.
right? How long do we tolerate faux concern, fake hospital bombings, blood libels? I mean, do we just, do this ad nauseum? I mean, when do we stop infantilizing that part of the world and
But
say, you know
I think,
what,
but
we
Yehuda,
can't keep saying your concerns are legitimate when you make them up. Hamas didn't say there were casualties at a hospital. They said the hospital was destroyed. They trotted out doctors that said the whole operating room collapsed on my head. We've been massacred, a genocide, blah, blah, blah. When will we differentiate between truth, between reality and nonsense? Do we have to say, we have to accept that these individuals will say whatever they want? And in my opinion, if we're being honest, they wanted to say, look, we've slaughtered, butchered 1,400 people. The world hated our video, shockingly. They didn't like it. So we need to make up a lie that they murdered 1,000 people at a hospital that still exists. I mean, my
That's
money
rich.
yeah,
on
Firas,
That's
let me.
really
I want to
rich,
get. Hold on,
Yehuda.
guys. I think this. We've gone down a rabbit hole out of respect, just for balance. Faraz, I'll let you respond to that statement,
Yep.
then we'll go back to Alex. I'll go to Faraz, Alex, and then we'll go back to you, Alex. Faraz, go ahead. Faraz, are you there? Yeah, go ahead.
Honestly, I find that very rich because he's talking about like how, people, we should always look for the truth, and stop infantilizing this whole situation. When I know you, Huda, your position on the Ukraine-Russia war, where
I would,
it's
Faraz,
completely justified.
I would focus on the statement regarding the
Can I
Israel.
No,
can I
that
answer?
the whole point is when you take another comparison in another occupation, another invasion of another sovereign land, suddenly it becomes crystal clear. But when it comes to the Palestinian people, then it's like, oh, why are we infantilizing it? It's hypocrisy. That's the point of what I'm trying to expose. And like 1,400 people that have been killed. There have been many years where much more until proven guilty, or get the benefit of doubt, especially since we are under military occupation. There is no scenario where under international law we have the right to resist. I'm not.
But
This is not a
Balance, can I
This is
comment
not
on the hospital?
condoning. One sec, Syrian girl. This is not me condoning Hamas or anything like that. But when you're under occupation, okay, Palestinians have a right to resist occupation. Why is that crystal clear in Russia, Ukraine, but it's not crystal clear in Palestine? And then we have to be nonviolent. We have to abide by. Look at what the Palestinian Authority has to abide by. Completely has to be
Yeah.
nonviolent, follow international rules, under international scrutiny all the time, completely aligning itself with international law, and still gets pummeled by the international community, including
We do have.
Europe, USA,
Uh,
and has to be held to impossible bars,
But I
just
can I also give a
yeah.
comment about the hospital bombing,
Uh,
like a final
no,
statement,
no.
because everyone else
Yeah,
got
I
one.
think,
Because
Syrian.
our side has not.
Yeah, I'll give you. I'll give you.
It's not
For
balanced.
I'll give you the. Nice play. Nice move. I'll give you the final word. But I will say this: there's breaking news. So it's confirmed, Hadi, that the Israeli airstrike tonight on the town of Kfar Shuba in southern Lebanon has destroyed the monument of the IRGC commander, the former commander of the IRGC, Qasem Soleimani.
Yes, and just for context, Kfar Shuba, the hills of Kfar Shuba are also under occupation by Israel, like Mazar al-Shaba. They're next to each other. They're Lebanese territories under occupation as well.
Okay, so can you tell me
This
more?
is
Why do you think they've destroyed the monument of the former commander of the IRGC Quds forces?
I think it's more symbolic because Hezbollah along the borders, they have a lot of monuments that are kind of provocative to the Jude occupation, especially on Lebanese territories. So there's different monuments of Shahid Qasem Soleimani, and they have other things like for Ahmad Mughniye. and for example, a monument of Al-Aqsa. So there's stuff like that along the borders, and even the wall that Israel built, there's a lot of drawings on it. And even in 2006 war, Israel did destroy a lot of monuments across Lebanon that remind the Lebanese people of what Israel committed, including the Khiyam concentration camp that they built in South Lebanon. Then it was later turned into a museum, and Israel in 2006 bombed it completely.
So do you
I
think?
it's more
But
symbolic.
do you think it's symbolic? But do you think that could increase the severity of Hezbollah's retaliation?
No. If it's just a monument, no one's killed. No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't at all.
Syrian, I'll give you the final statement before going to Alex. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Because a few people got to say their final say on the thing. So thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to be
All
saying
good,
that
all
it's
good.
not balanced, but thank you
Alright,
for the
all
point.
good. Go ahead, Norris.
So what Yehuda said, now I want you guys to observe how the narrative keeps shifting. Now the narrative is the bombing was all like a false flag and nobody was killed. We all saw the dismembered bodies and injured babies that was coming out of the burning cars in the car park and inside the building, which I will post as well. Although the building wasn't as damaged as I think the bomb did hit in the car park. But the notion that people didn't die is now what's being floated around. So now, before it was what Hamas bombing it and then Islamic Jihad. Now it just didn't even happen. And before that, the Israelis were admitting it. So out of the 9,000, like the Israelis have already admitted bombing 6,000, dropping 6,000 bombs on Gaza 6 days ago. And now, with these 9,000, 10,000 bombs that have been dropped, supposedly just this one bomb that hit this hospital is the one that we have to question. Every single video that was posted by OzInt and all of them show that the Hamas rocket barrage was in a completely different trajectory to where the hospital was bombed.
But based
So
on whose
I would like to open the
calculations?
front now to just to show you how the narrative keeps shifting. It's interesting now that we have to deny it ever even happened. Okay, so
So
I
just
guess you
very
can.
briefly, briefly, Mar, I'd like to respond. So first of all, I'd like to know by whose calculations, whose physics calculations are you determining the trajectory is completely different, right? Because if you can
From
bring,
video evidence, you can see
okay,
it
so
with your own
hold
eyes.
on here. I don't know if you're a physicist, right? But there are people with munitions.
I am a physicist. Would you believe? I'm a biophysicist and a chemist.
Yeah.
And a
So
pilot too, and a
just
fighter
let
pilot.
me just no, just I'm going to
I'm
be
not a
1 second.
fighter
No
pilot.
steering wheel. Let me
I've trained
please
as a
let me just.
pilot.
Okay,
So
which is
thank you
fine.
very much for bringing that up. In fact, about my
Okay,
expertise as a
so I would
scientist,
just like,
a physicist,
Syrian girl,
a
please, I
chemist,
didn't interrupt
and
you.
a
Just give
pilot.
me a minute. No, Syrian girl, just 1 minute. Listen, I understand what you're saying, and that's fine. I don't agree with it. That being said, what I said about the burden of proof being shifted, it is absolutely accurate. It is no longer up to the government of Israel to prove that they did not.
Oh yes,
Let me finish.
the
Let
audio
me
recording.
finish.
You talked to me
Syrian,
today.
I did not. Right? The audio recording that was released, it was concerning, right? I'm going to be the first to admit that because it didn't really sound like a Gazan accent. I'm familiar with it. I'll be very candid with you. I know the sounds of the Gazan accent. That being said, the sun has risen, and the hospital is still it's standing, right? So I don't want to dwell on this. And what I'm saying though is, when you're accused of something and you go to trial, there's two options, right? After the prosecution makes its case, the defense can rest immediately, which means that you do not believe that the prosecution has even made a case. You don't feel the need to rebut it, or you have to defend it. So at the end of the day, the burden of proof has shifted. I'm not saying that you are wrong with your ideas and your right to refute it, but you can't just put videos that don't have any physics on it and mathematical calculations when you have a room full of people who have expertise in the field who are not pro-Israel or pro-anything, just giving unbiased viewpoints. In any case,
Are you a
we can.
physicist?
I beg your pardon?
Are you a physicist? Because I.
Yeah. So in any case, I did want to ask Firas very briefly because I think it's an important thing to know. What is the temperament like in the West Bank? I know that there were rioting, and I believe there were some settler attacks yesterday. So Firas, if I could ask you, how are things there?
And it's escalating every single day. And this is a front that, I know the space likes to focus on. Things can go up in the north because maybe they have the rockets in the north, and it could get really
I've always thought
loud.
the West
But
Bank is the barometer of the region, to be honest.
exactly, the West Bank is boiling up, and this is going to be the front that everyone needs to have to look at, because before you know it, if the West Bank explodes, no one can hold it back. There's settler attacks constantly now. It's ridiculous. It's out of hand. Israeli military are extremely jumpy at any wrong move, any flinch, and you'll get shot. And it's been happening over, I think it was the last figure was 62 Palestinians have been killed since October 7th. So that's an unprecedented amount to happen, not in a time of war, when the West Bank isn't in an intifada. Number three, there are protests happening, support, against the bombing that happened in Gaza for the hospital. Number four, there were some smaller protests in Nablus and in Ramallah and Jenin against the Palestinian Authority, which I think are very hypocritical.
Wait.
And very
Can you repeat that, Firas? There was a protest against what?
Against the Palestinian Authority, which
Against the boss.
Yeah, because I think they were.
That's a huge point that we haven't touched on. That's extremely concerning.
Yeah,
oh my
yeah.
gosh.
So there were major protests in terms of against the whole Gaza bombing, but then there were some smaller, the whole rioting that was happening inside. And this is what I think is super hypocritical, because when the people in Gaza were saying, like West Bank, get our back, rise up, all this stuff, make your voices heard, they ended up just breaking stuff in a Palestinian city and going against the PA. It's like there's Israeli military right next to you, like 5 kilometers, less than 5 kilometers away, and there's settlers, wreaking havoc, and then you're like a coward to go face the settlers in the military, but you're like a lion, or like you're very courageous when you want to face the Palestinian Authority, which I think is completely hypocritical. And this is just them kind of expressing, some people just express their anger, and they have this idea that what's holding them back from independence is the PA, which is this is, I guess, a lot of misguided people.
Yeah, and I think you would agree with me in the sense that I think people don't pay enough attention to the temperature of the West Bank, because everyone's focused on Gaza right now, but normally, from what I know, I mean, it is the barometer of the entire Middle East, right? Ramallah specifically, and it's
100%.
Yeah, but one last question: Are you, because we spoke yesterday, and I want to go to Piotr and Tad Ape? Are you at least a little bit more open to the idea that potentially it was a Hamas rocket, or are you still locked into the narrative that it wasn't?
Honestly, you know what I'm gonna do? I decided, I made a decision today, which is the UN announced that they're gonna do their own investigation, and I'm gonna stick by the findings of the UN investigation. Whatever they say, I'm gonna stick with, because the UN is like the most impartial body. They don't have an agenda. They just want to get to the facts, and they have experts from all around the world. They'll be very thorough, and I think the UN would make it crystal clear, and I think everyone should kind of make that commitment as well.
Yep.
Whatever the UN comes up with, let's go with that.
And you know what? That's a fair statement, and I agree with that, and I appreciate that. If we could go just quickly to Piotr, because I know he's been wanting to chime in. Piotr, please.
Thanks, Benjamin. Yeah, a few points. Guys, I wanted to, if Marion, you are moving on from, back and forth about the reviewing of what happened yesterday, I just wanted to say a couple of things, and then I wanted to also chime in on something else. So yeah, look, what we've talked about here is, again, it's why I chimed in with propagandist was simply because he's doing something called loose association, which is that basically you speculate, but because of one article, you can then speculate about everything else related to said article. And I read the article, and the article doesn't necessarily directly explicitly state, they reference, let me rephrase it, they reference other articles and sources that aren't speculating. So we go from clear fact to sort of fact to then speculative to then completely like, well, we're just associating everything else. It's like association by guilt, right? So that was why I was just emphasizing, because dumb bombs versus smart bombs in the case of Ukraine and Russia, a nation state conflict, an interstate conflict versus a non-state actor and a state actor in this situation, very different rules of the game, rules of engagement, very different type of warfare. Second point I just wanted to make is that when I'm listening to people speak, again, I'm going to focus on the narratives that I'm coming from both sides. Because I'm not an expert on the subject matter, I'd like to talk about what I'm hearing, because I think it's valuable for us all to think about. One of the biggest things that I think about is, whataboutism is a very popular form of argument, and I've heard a lot of that here. And no one's denying that the West is terrible in certain things and hypocrisy. But we can talk about what Israel has done, yeah, but then we can also talk about what Russia did by taking a video game in 2015, I believe, and making it out that it was actually the Americans supporting ISIS and backing them, and it was a snapshot of a satellite video game for an iPhone. So everybody does this. Everybody is lying. Everybody is propagandizing. Everybody is taking information and manipulating it to suit their agenda. So all I'm saying is that when I hear one side speak tonight, they're speaking more based on actual factual evidence than other people sort of saying, well, I saw this image and it's a little bit less clear cut for me. The other thing is that when I listen to fellow military personnel speak to one another, like Yehuda and Craig, and I'm not picking people out, there's a certain respect and sort of just willingness to agree. And I can guarantee you, as someone who's got friends all over the world in different military things, even the Russians and the Americans, not in everything, of course, but a large proportion of, if you've served, you will appreciate that a fellow serviceman is talking sense because you know what they're talking about. If you're an armchair historian or an armchair analyst, and you sit down and like, no, because I analysed a video, suddenly I've got 20 years worth of military experience, it just comes out in the way you speak that you don't have that intricate amount of detail. And so you resort to whataboutisms or petty pokes and things like that. So for me, it's not as clear. And then one of the last things I will say is just what Alex will probably continue expanding upon after I finish, is that what we have in Israel, Palestine, Gaza, Hamas, Hezbollah is a cycle. The Palestinians feel oppressed. They feel subjugated. They feel restricted by the Israelis. They feel that they are being encroached upon in West Bank, and they feel that they've been basically under a open air prison, a siege. I'm not taking sides. I'm just describing it from one perspective to the other, right? And so the Israelis then clamp down harder. They impose stricter laws. They restrict certain access to certain things, and that frustrates people. And that has happened for a long, long time. And then you get flare-ups, like we see on an incremental base, on a periodical basis, and then things like this happen. No one's accepting what happened on October 7th as an okay thing, but you have to take the historical context of this further back than just the past couple of weeks. You have to put it to 1967, 1948, or 1917 with the Balfour Declaration in London, when it was signed in London. So I'm just trying to keep an idea here that we've got a cycle now, a flare up, and then massive events like the hospital happen, and suddenly we're now, people want even more blood, and we all become enraged, and social media is just perpetuating the whole thing. I just want to draw that attention to that because it's incredibly important when we talk about these things. Otherwise, we can get wrapped so much in the focus of the subject itself, and not take.
I think that's actually really.
The whole thing. Thank you for letting me chime in. It's a very good discussion.
You sound a bit amped up, Piotr, and I think it's the first time I heard you like this. But
I'm energized. Yes.
I think actually, Piotr, I think that those are actually very, very good points.
But guys, just breaking news. So there's something breaking. So Biden said, so we're talking about the U.S. intervening if Hezbollah gets involved. So Biden just said in a speech, I'm going to post out the video now. So let me confirm the video says. Let me play the video. Actually, hold on. Let me play it for you, and I'll post it out right after.
Light for so many around the world. That's what the terrorists seek to destroy. That's what they seek to destroy. Because they live in darkness, but not you, not Israel. Nations of conscience like the United States and Israel are not measured solely by the example or power. We're measured by the power of our example. That's why, as hard as it is, we must keep pursuing peace. We must keep pursuing a path so that Israel and the Palestinian people can both live safely.
So this is a clip. I don't think it says it in that clip, but there's a statement I'm going to try to. Okay, it doesn't say it in that clip.
Is that the one, Mario, when he said
hold on. No, is there so is there a statement he made? I did not promise to Israeli officials that America would intervene if Hezbollah intervened in the battle.
Of course. That's a neutral position. I don't think he would say anything else. I mean, that's exactly what I expected.
But didn't US from memory? It's just we've gone through so much details. I want to go to Alex afterwards, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what he said before was, I have a message to those that would consider exploiting the situation. Don't, right? Which is, I think that's very clear cut. But by him saying, I have made no promises with the government of Israel.
I agree. It is a fair statement, but he's never explicitly said that they'll get involved. It wasn't him but it was through other channels. I think other officials did say that the US will get involved if Hezbollah gets involved. From memory, does anyone remember?
I think it was just articles saying that they sent the
Yeah.
ships just to warn Hezbollah. I don't think there was any official claims that they will actually intervene if Hezbollah intervenes.
I think there
Actually,
was
there
some
was
sort
a
of statement. Yeah.
statement by the U.S. I don't remember who in the U.S. that said exactly, in case Hezbollah joins the war, we're gonna defend with our weapons.
Yeah, I
So
think so. I think
Yeah, and
There was a warning from the U.S. government to Hezbollah if they intervened, and to Iran if they intervened, that the U.S. will have to use its arsenal to defend Israel. That was the warning that was used, and that was when the ships got arrived into the Gulf and the Red Sea.
Yeah, and I think that the statement that Biden made, just from the way I read it, is actually exactly what I would expect. It's ambiguous to a certain point. All he's saying is that I did not specifically promise Netanyahu that I would, that we would get involved. I don't think he would be expected to issue any
Fair
other kind of
point.
statement.
Fair point. I do want to go back to Alex. Alex, we're seeing a lot of these developments on the northern border. Let me post out that. I'll post it out afterwards. But we saw now Israel did bomb that statue of the Iranian leader. Sorry, the right-hand man of the Iranian leader, who is considered the commander of the IRGC forces. We also have a lot of protests in various Arab countries and non-Arab countries as well. There's a lot of protests in Lebanon, a lot of protests in Jordan, West Bank, and Turkey following the explosion at the hospital.
Athens
as well, yeah. So in various countries, and we're seeing the clashes between Hezbollah and the Israeli forces escalate on the Lebanese border. Where we stand today compared to where we were a few days, do you think the risk of a clash with Hezbollah has increased, or is pretty much the same as it was a week ago?
I mean, Hezbollah is a pretty disciplined force in terms of how they operate. So right now, it looks like there's skirmishes. My guess, based on what they're doing at this point, is there's still a little fire going back and forth across the border. They're not going to take any strikes coming in without responding to it. I think, which is a message, to Israel that they're not going to take it. But they're also not looking to escalate at the moment. It's also meant to keep the troops tied up north, because that means there's less troops that are then available for Gaza. So it basically splits the Israeli army in that sense and creates a potential for a northern front, which means that's a second theater that they have to worry about. And don't forget, you've only got one prime minister, you've got one commander of the armed forces, and yes, you've got somebody in charge of the north. But effectively now you are splitting your time and attention, focusing on two different areas instead of just on one, and it's a drain on resources. So from a strategy standpoint, it makes total sense what they're doing. Now, whether that goes beyond what they're doing right now and it develops into a full-blown Hezbollah offensive towards Israel, and whether that's limited to rockets or it comes with a ground attack, is unknown. Speculation is probably more along the rocket side. But as you mentioned, and as I was talking about before, the reason I started before getting into the hospital analysis, which I haven't hit yet, is that, as I was mentioning, and for almost everything Faraz said, I completely agreed with, in terms of how people feel and how they're looking at it, and the anger that they've had towards, policies and treatment that they feel has been completely unjustified, and that the world has ignored and sort of taken one side versus the other in conflicts since 1948. So that anger and that repressed anger as a result of that is very real. And to the extent that that informs, political decisions and military decisions in other neighboring countries, is a possibility. And if that continues to grow and build in light of activities that are going on the ground in Gaza, at some point that could be a trigger for additional military action.
But as we've seen, there is a limitation in terms of supply
on the Israelis to not do anything yet? Is it just because the Israelis aren't ready? But whatever happens, while we're seeing escalations, if you want to call it that, in the borders, I still don't think that that's going to lead to all-out conflict on the ground as well. An increase in aerial exchanges is one thing, but then you've got to think about the border with Syria. I still think the Syrian border or Golan Heights, I guess, is one of the more ambiguous parts of this whole equation, just because it's not clear exactly how forces in the Syrian territory would operate, what they would plan to do, who it would be, how they'd be supported. Would be Iran doing that more? And then Jordan. I mean, Jordan is not happy. I'm not saying they're suddenly going to get involved, but they've got a huge representation of Palestinians, historically speaking. So they're not exactly okay with everything that's going on. So this point is getting very, very blurry for me, and despite my best efforts to try and make sense of it, I'm really not sure how it would play out in a sort of geopolitical scenario.
I also think it's important to note, Sean in the audience, Sean Darland, pointed it out to me. So the exact statement that Biden made, does someone have the exact quote? Because I think we have to be careful. I believe he said, we would not engage on the ground. I don't think that is actually precluding engagement in the air, right? I don't know if he drew that distinction. If someone could get that exact quote, Mario,
I have the exact statement if you want, Benjamin.
And what was it?
Well, his exact statement was, I also spoke with Netanyahu about the ground operation in Gaza and whether there are other alternatives to that.
Okay, that is interesting. Thank you.
So hold on, what's that statement, Zev? What do you guys just discuss now?
Biden's statement about what he basically said to reporters on Air Force One regarding the ground operation. His statement is, I also spoke with Netanyahu about the ground operation in Gaza and whether there are other alternatives to that.
Right, but he also made a statement regarding HEZBOLLAH, right up in the
So
north.
can you confirm? So I'm asking. So Hadi, just quickly, sorry, Zev. Hadi, can you confirm? Did he say this?
Here's the Hezbollah statement.
Yeah, can you read it, please? Just want to confirm it's accurate.
Yeah, the Hezbollah statement is Hezbollah. That basically Biden says that should Hezbollah initiate a war with Israel, the U.S. military will not be a part of it.
Okay, I didn't realize it was that crystal clear. I thought it was more nuanced than that, and him saying that we wouldn't. I'll have to go find
the
it.
ones that the media is reporting, it says exactly, we did not inform Israel that we would enter the war if Hezbollah joined the conflict. I think that's what everyone, even like the Arab media translated that one.
Fair enough.
The exact wording though was pretty nuanced. If you wouldn't mind, can you read that back one more time?
Yeah, sure. It says, we did not inform Israel that we would enter the war if Hezbollah joined the conflict.
That was one.
And we also,
there was one that you were reading previously that I thought said if Israel starts a war with Hezbollah, they won't get involved.
So is there the statement that
if Hezbollah starts?
Yeah. So can you send me?
I misunderstood.
Yeah, it's Heidi. Can you? I've asked the team. So Al-Quds, which is one of the sources we use, I know a lot of you hate it, and I might actually remove it. But I did not promise to Israel officials that America would intervene if Hezbollah intervened in the battle. That's what Al-Quds put out. I've asked my team to get another source for obvious reasons, to get the exact quote. I'm not sure if this is a quote additional to what you have, Heidi, or it's the same one. They've just, for some reason, rephrased it.
I mean, that's the same one. I'm just reporting the one that was said by. But I'm trying to look for an actual source that everyone can agree on. So I'm just gonna check and let you know. But that's what everyone's reporting. The same one. No one's changed the wording.
Thanks, Heidi. So Mario, can I answer the hospital question now? Because I
go ahead,
I know
Alex.
it was posed.
Please, yeah.
And so I said, as I said last night, I was withholding really passing any judgment until I saw more evidence, because last night everything didn't quite make sense that was coming in. So what we saw last night, let's just walk through the scenario all together. And for those who are new, if I haven't been on here with you before, I'm an American. I'm not Israeli. I'm not Palestinian. I'm not Jewish. I'm not Muslim. I'm just some random, Catholic guy in Connecticut. So I'll just leave it that way. So in terms of just strict military analysis, getting into this, thanks.
You're a bit more than that, Alex, but I appreciate that description.
You're with the Atlantic Council, which is NATO.
It's not NATO, but it's an
fantastic
independent
organization.
We try, but don't always succeed, but we try. So let's just go through it. So last night there was an explosion near or at the.
I think someone called you.
Alex,
you're back. You're back.
Yeah, sorry, I just had to ignore an incoming call. My apologies, and Rhodes cut me off. So last night we all saw an explosion in or near the hospital, And immediately there were issues of denial, both from Israel and from the Palestinian factions that were involved. They had one guy, Naftali Bennett, who is a soldier who was a reservist who's on orders, came forward and put out a tweet and said something like, this is what happens when you do X, Y, or Z. He's a reservist in some random unit now. He's not in a strategic area where he would have actually had an idea of what was going on, and it was deleted pretty clearly afterwards.
There wasn't Naftali Bennett, just to correct. There was Hanina Naftali,
Oh, I'm sorry.
not Naftali Bennett. He's the former prime minister.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's been too much talk
And
the last 2 days.
Netanyahu placed
Thank
him
you.
as the information warfare division. He's placed by Netanyahu as the spokesperson for
Yeah,
the
but I
media
think there
arm
was an
of the
example of
IDF.
him making false statements before. I think he made one about Hezbollah rockets. He blamed them on Hezbollah. Turned out to be some Palestinian group. So he's posted.
But
Yeah.
So I think I just think that this is his personal Twitter. So him working in the media department doesn't mean that everything he posts is his. Even just so you know, Syrian I actually I highlighted his mistake.
Yes.
As a post. So I still think it's
Thanks.
worth discussing. But yeah, he's got a history of making mistakes. But go ahead. Sorry, Alex.
Yeah, no, that's all right, and so did I just now with the names. That's 100% correct. So yeah, what he put out last night was clearly not correct. And one point I was making is he wasn't sitting in a strategic center where he would have seen whatever targets were being gone after, where he could have even made that statement. So it was clearly a personal one that came out. So that's the first piece. We saw the explosion at or near the hospital, right? First thing that came out was the Israelis said no, it wasn't us, and eventually it was a PIJ rocket because they launched a barrage nearby, is what they said. Then you have PIG saying, or or Hamas saying, it was an Israeli bomb or airstrike that came in. There's 200, 300, 500 dead. By the time of the end of the night, it was the Iranians putting out a statement saying there was 1,000 dead people at the hospital, right? So that's one piece. We saw pictures of the fire that were there. It's now very clear based on the photographs of what happened that it was all the vehicles that were on fire that were in the parking lot or the car park, as our British friends would call it. How am I getting a thumbs down, Sergio? You literally just talked about it being a parking lot. So, can we stop with the nonsense?
yeah,
All
can
right.
I say? I can
No,
explain
please,
why.
actually,
Because
please.
No,
you're
let
also
Alex.
under.
We'll have to let Alex
Nothing
finish,
but
please.
nonsense. I've
Go ahead,
seen
Alex.
nothing but nonsense about this the last 2 hours. So please. Okay. The explosion is very clear with what you saw. When you look at there is no more than a blast radius of 50 feet from where it impacted. The crater from where it hit is no more than 18 inches. Okay. It didn't strike the main structure of the building. So if we don't talk about who's a physicist, if you can explain to me how you stack 500 to 1,000 bodies in a 50 square foot area, then that would be a miracle. Okay. The casualty figures that came out last night were absolutely nonsensical. That was the first thing that told me something was off, because you don't come back and count that many bodies in that period of time. It's simply impossible, right? So something was off. When you look at the impact crater, it is very clear, based on that and the damage that around there, that is not a bomb that is coming from an aircraft or a missile that came in there. It is too small of a yield for what's there. It's a rocket. You can give as many thumbs down as you want, but that's the reality of the situation. So when you look at it and see the pattern that's there, the casualty voice intercept and whether or not it's got an accent from Gaza or whatever else.